We are now live.
Okay, it is now 9:31 on Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. This is the regular meeting of the Third Laguna Hills Mutual Board of Directors, a California nonprofit mutual benefit corporation. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I see that we have a quorum, and I will now ask Director Bada if you would please lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
In just a second, sir.
Okay, sir, thank you.
I would request everyone to stand and put your hand on your chest and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Director
You may all be
Bada.
seated.
Thank you. All right, we acknowledge that there's probably media in attendance. I will now ask for an approval of the agenda. I'm going to ask for a modification, though, when we do that approval, that we remove number 7 on the agenda, presentation by Dennis Cafferty, General Manager, El Toro Water District. He will be with us once we have meetings back in person, but he would prefer to be with us in person rather than virtually. So I would ask to approve the agenda minus that particular item. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? I see Annie McCary moves.
I second.
I see Kush seconds. All righty. Any additions or deletions or changes to the rest of the agenda? Hearing none, I will then go ahead and assume by consent that the agenda is approved with that modification. I'll now ask for approval of the minutes from December 10th, the agenda prep meeting, the special open meeting, and the December 21st regular board meeting. Can I get a motion? Lynn Jarrett, are you moving?
Yes.
Okay. Can I get a second to approve the minutes from those 3 meetings? I see Ralph seconds. Thank you. Any corrections, Director Laws?
Yes, regarding the December 21st minutes, my recollection is that during the approval of the agenda, I had requested that consent calendar item 11D be moved to new business. That was the discussion about some committee reassignments. So that was moved out. And then it was discussed and there was a vote that didn't get captured in the minutes. Yeah, so I would like that to happen if possible. Thank you.
Okay, I'm trying to, do you have the page that's on that you're looking at?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, the page 1, which is at the very bottom, it says, hearing no other changes, the motion passed without objection, but it doesn't mention anything about moving 11.
I think it's 5A, isn't it, Mark?
Pardon?
I think it's agenda item number 5A, page 1 of 3, page 1 of 2. December 10th? Is that correct?
No, he's on December, he said December 21st.
Oh, he did? Okay.
I did, yes. Specifically, if you recall, I had some questions about the
Appointment
of the landscape chair, and that was discussed a little bit. Robert explained why he made that appointment, and then there was a vote. And the appointment stuff is on pages, or the calendar stuff is on pages 7, 8, and 9. But there's no comment about the vote. So I just wanted that in there.
All righty, so you would like to see the vote listed?
Yes, please.
All right, then we'll ask Grant to go back and have some of the staff members go back and see what the vote was and put the vote in.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Okay, I don't have any problem with that. Anybody else? Questions, changes? Hearing none, then with that modification to the December 21st regular board meeting minutes, we would have the vote listed. We'll go ahead and assume then by consent that the 3 sets of minutes are approved unless I hear otherwise. Okay, they're all approved. Report of the chair. I have just two things to share with you. Number one, for the members who are watching, we are postponing all town halls at this point until there's no longer a mask mandate. When there's no longer a mask mandate, we'll start the town halls up again. But at this point, they're temporarily suspended. Also, since this is a virtual meeting and we need to make sure that when we do voting and everything, that everybody's in agreement, or, we do roll call votes, I would ask that all members of the third board please keep their cameras on so that we can see what's going on in terms of voting. Other than that, I don't have anything else. Update from the VMS board. Wei Ming, I assume you're going to do that for us? Did we just lose
Yes.
Wei Ming? Okay.
Yes.
Wei Ming, the floor is yours.
Okay. Grant, can you pull up the presentation slide? Okay. The VMS update to Third Mutual. There are a few recent key hires. Next page, please. First one is Corporate Secretary Michelle Estrada. She started employment January 3rd. She has 10 plus years community association experience, and her most recent role was community manager, where she acted as an advisor to board of directors, homeowners, and vendors. She was responsible for insurance and accounting, liaised with legal counsel, and prepared agendas, board packets, and other correspondence for board and community meeting in accordance with civil code. She also served in U.S. Air Force as Secretary Forces Officer. We welcome Michelle to the team. We are thrilled to have her. Next page, please. The second new hire is General Service Director Robert Carroll. He started employment January 17. He has 30 plus years public sector experience. His most recent role was Police Administrative Budget Manager with Santa Ana Police Department, where he managed budgets of up to $140 million annually, and he was responsible for police department fleet operations, administered large janitorial and landscape maintenance contracts, and coordinated solid waste and recycle program. Welcome to VMS, Robert. Next page, please. The third new hire is Assistant Corporate Secretary. She will start employment January 24th. Her prior community association experience was a property manager and associate manager, where most recent role was accounts receivable with law firm specializing in real estate, including HOA matters. She assisted with management of multiple communities. Her experience also include policies and procedures to improve effective and efficient use of properties, and conducted board and community meetings. We know these three new hires are going to be valuable assets to VMS, and can't wait to see what they accomplish. Thank you. The next page. Welcome aboard. The departmental update this month will be Media and Communication Department, the department's key 2022 initiatives. Next page. Village website rebuild and design spearheaded by GRF Media and Communication Committee, MACC, where they are going to replace this 2015 Village website that started as marketing platform, to which many functions were added as self-management involved. The process includes focus group to solicit resident input. And the second initiative is village survey to be completed under MACC umbrella. Features survey advisory group, including board representatives, department heads, and residents. Next page, please. The third initiative is the broadband group, TGB study, determine most recent timeline to transition community from cable television network to full streaming platform. This including 3, 5, and 10 years plan. And determine best plan for GRF to provide internet services to village residents 5 years from now. The benefits, well-informed decisions, maintenance investments, and possibly increase GRF revenue. Next page, please. Next, we are going to talk about the VMS Board Director 2022 goals and activities. Next page. 2022 goals and activities. The overview. The first one is the corporate control, where we are going to review performance report, financials, and KPIs. Will provide budget directives and continuous improvement goals. And secondly, will be corporate strategy. Here we are talking about a VMS board as a VMS independent company. The strategy will be, we will work with the management team and the customer boards to set framework for the year, develop 5-year strategic plan, and focus will be on operational and functional excellence. And third one is talent development. We'll set talent review objectives, succession plan for CEO and key senior executives. Next one. The fourth goal is the risk management. We will do the annual risk review, including mitigation approaches. And the fifth one is CEO selection and evaluation. We will continue to develop leadership competency and performance goals for the CEO, and also will perform annual performance review and plus the mid-year review. The last one is board self-assessment at the year end. At the year end, we'll continue to do 360-degree evaluation on our performance, and will determine the best approach for board process enhancement. Next page, please. Please, this is it. Please feel free to contact VMS at info@lagunawoodsvillage.com, or you can contact your mutual board representatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Wei Ming. Does any members of the board have any questions for Wei Ming in terms of her presentation? Hearing none. Wei Ming, thank you very much for the update, and we look forward to working with the 3 new employees. Thank you. I just want to also say, which I failed to say during my report of the chair, this is for us as Third Mutual, Jeff Parker's last meeting as CEO. He's retiring February 4th. I personally want to thank Jeff for all of his service to not only Third Mutual, but to the village in general. And I want to wish you well in terms of the next chapter of your life. So thank you, Jeff. All righty, we're now ready to move to the open forum. 3 minutes per speaker. At this time, members only may address the board of directors regarding items that are not on the agenda. For members who are present, who are here to speak about the lease cap, when we get to item 14B on the agenda, that's when you'll have an opportunity to speak about the lease cap. So right now, it's items that are not on the agenda and that are within the jurisdiction of this board of directors. Everybody will have 3 minutes. And what we'll do is we'll take first the people who are in attendance who are attendees. Grant will move you in one at a time to speak. And after we finish with the people who are in attendance, we'll go to Connie for Connie to read those emails that were received. So Grant, do we have people waiting to speak?
We do currently have one, Jilla Zalon. I will bring them over now.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Zalon, can you hear us?
Yes.
All right, the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Are we here? Hello?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear? Hello?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Is there any video or is it just sound?
We can see you
see you.
and hear you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Saturday, I served the board with 679 petitions seeking the recall of directors Munchnick and Jarrett. This is not the proper place to campaign in favor of the recall, and of course, it would be similarly improper for them to use their response to campaign against it. Let me also state flatly, I have nothing personally against either director. Anyone who spends the amount of time all these directors voluntarily give to the community deserves both our respect and our gratitude. But that doesn't mean we don't have our differences about how the board goes about our business. And when those differences are substantial, when one feels that the board is moving in the wrong direction, one has an obligation to set one's face against it. So I am here solely to urge the members to take the upcoming vote seriously and to consider the arguments both for and against as if your community's life depended on it. Because it does. And I yield the balance of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Grant, anyone else? You said there was one person. Is there anybody else?
At this time, I do not see anybody in attendance who, oh, 1 second. I see somebody has just raised their hand. Sherry Horn. I will now move them over.
Okay, thank you. Sherry, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear and see me?
Yes, the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm calling in to say that I have worked shoulder to shoulder with Liz Barrett for 15 years in the Garden Villa Association. First as building captains, then regional reps, then I took over as president, then Lynn did. This is a club that works only to improve the quality of life for seniors throughout this community. And throughout the time that I've known Lynn, that has been her only goal. Everything that she does is for the residents here. She has integrity, she works hard, she finds out about the issues, and I think what I'm hearing and seeing is making my heart sick. It's not right to have this petition against her, and the people that have sent me this petition, I've communicated with, and I want to tell people that if they want to take their name off this petition because they were influenced by whatever, they can certainly do it. This is costing the community tons of money that we can't have, that we don't have. There's going to be like another $35,000 or $50,000 for this, and then more elections. Robert was only president for 2 months when you issued this recall. It feels like it's more to drive a wedge than to pursue legitimate beefs against these people. I can certainly stand up for the character of Lynn, and she does not deserve to be recalled from this board. And I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Lynn. on behalf of all the residents whose lives you have improved immeasurably in all the years that you've served. Thank you very much. And please don't pass this petition. There's no need for it, and it's just dividing us more. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Grant, anyone else?
I see no other speakers who have attended in person. So we'll now go to the
Connie?
email comments.
Okay, Connie, email comments on things not on the agenda, please.
Yes, I have two. All right. Stuart Hawk, 23933D. As a 19-year resident of Laguna Woods and former president of the Garden Villa Association, I have lived with and worked with many third mutual boards. Many times I have disagreed with them, but never wanted them to be recalled because they saw things differently than I did. There will always be differing opinions within our community leadership. The appropriate way to express them is through input to the sitting board and opinion articles, as well as volunteering your services to the community. The ultimate method of expressing one's opinion is during the annual election process. We have another election in a matter of months. There is no need to add 30,000 plus to our already burdensome budget to attempt to remove a third board member just a couple of months away from his or her standing for re-election. That is just mean-spirited and not in the community's best interest. If you believe that we need to control expenses, surely you don't want to add this needless expense. Kristen Collins, 3306Q. This is an update on the work of the Foundation of Laguna Woods Village to assist village residents experiencing temporary financial emergency. As the holiday season has concluded, the Foundation realizes that there is a great deal to be thankful for. The donations and support of the village, both individuals and clubs, had made it possible for the Foundation to provide help when needed. And that support and donations were provided even though we have gone through a particularly difficult year due to the pandemic. Without this support, the Foundation would not have been able to assist the vaccination effort in the village, distribute masks, help more vulnerable residents with the 30,000 in grocery cards, fund Meals on the Wheels, support ongoing fall prevention efforts, and provide emergency financial assistance. In addition to all the individual residents who have donated, the Foundation is very grateful to the following clubs and groups who have donated this past year, particularly since many have been unable to meet and the pandemic was difficult for their members. Abundant thanks to the following clubs: Men's Golf Club, Women's Golf Club, Laguna Woods Art Association, Ceramic Casters Club, Chicago Club, Democratic Club, Joyful Christian Club, Lawn Bowling Club, New Harmoniers, Needlework Club, New Jersey Club, Players Club, PC Club, Center for Spiritual Living, RV Wheelers Club, Republican Club, Table Tennis Club. Thank you for your generous support of the Foundation. It is truly neighbors helping neighbors. For more information, please go to our website at foundationoflagunawoodsvillage.org or contact the Foundation at 949-268-2246 or foundations@comline.com. Please note that donation can always be made using PayPal on the Foundation website. This concludes the email comment.
Thank you very much. All right, and I thank the speakers, each of the speakers for their presentations. We'll now move on to item 11, the CEO, COO report. Jeff, I assume you're going to go first?
Yep, I will get on the video here. There we go. Good morning, everybody. President Munchik, and to all residents out there on Third. With COVID update real quick. As of last week, and if you go on the Orange County website, they're only producing what they had for Friday, but our numbers were substantially up again this last week. We went from 964 hospitalizations up to 1,154, and we saw a impact of that on the ICUs going from 140 ICU cases up to 171. So as you have read in the paper, and as we all know, because we're going virtual,
The Omicron variant has certainly had an impact in the state of California, nationwide, and obviously in Orange County, and it continues to expand. Hopefully they're getting some controls on it. They anticipate a downward trend happening after the 24th. With regards to our own community here, Laguna Woods, which we're a part of the city of Laguna Woods, our numbers went up from 726 on the last week to the end of the week being at 781. So again, a pretty big jump just for a week's period of time. Luckily, only one additional fatality in our community, so that's the positive side of it. Again, for those people out there that are residents and everything, it's about being safe and wearing your mask, washing your hands, all of the protocols that we've had in place in the past. But this COVID-19 is spreading quickly and fast, and so we want to make sure that people are protected and that they stay as safe as possible, and hopefully not impact the hospitalizations too much, so that people can go get regular service and emergency services as they needed, and not being impacted by this. But unfortunately, it continues to grow. The second item I had was I have a short presentation PowerPoint that Grant's going to pull up on the solid waste transition timeline that's going on. So I just wanted to pull that up real quick and go through that, and then that's all I have, and I'll pass it on to Siobhan. So Grant, can you pull up the PowerPoint and go to page 2? So we'll start off with transitional timeline. So CR&R organics recycling, the carts were delivered between January 3rd and the 5th, and collection is underway. The CR&R trash and regular recycling cart delivery is where they're swapping out all of the waste management carts and putting in CR&R. Began that regular recycling process, personal and shared, this last week. Change order is expected to last 2 full weeks. There's a lot of bins out there and a lot of carts that have to be swapped out. So hopefully that will get done in a timely manner. But that is as I just want to make sure everybody recalls that this is something that CR&R is not doing just for the village, but is doing throughout their separate communities that they're processing. So it is a timely process to get all of them swiped out. Next page. The again, on the timeline, the trash and regular recycling bin delivery, they began swapping out the waste management 3-yard bins for CR&R bins on January 3rd, and they have a plan to swap out 100 bins per week. So that shows you the amount that they've anticipate that they can get done. So that's why it's a 2 to 3 week process to get everything completed in the village. And then with regards to the bulky item collection during February, CNR will map and practice routes for the zone-based weekly bulky item pickup process, and updates will be shared in the What's Up in the Village and in the Village Breeze and on Village Television. This is a new bulky item collection process where we'll be taking bulky items in zones, and you have a map that will show exactly what area you live in and what zone you're in, and they'll be able to do bulky item collections on a weekly basis in that particular zone, as opposed to the past system, which was you had to call in, make a reservation, and it was on a specific on a Saturday once a month. So this will give more flexibility and actually be more timely as far as the pickup of bulky items. Next page. So just a reminder on the organics, you have the new organics carts out there, what you can put into the organics recycling, the yes to food, all the different things there that you can put in to this recycling bin, yes to pet food products, and yes to soil paper, coffee filter napkins, plates, all of those type of things can also go into the organics recycling. And then yes to greenery. And why you see that, obviously, some people have potted plants and stuff like that they can, house plants that they can put into the green waste. The reason we have that up there as well is because outside of the village, if you're in a community where you have a green waste container where they're doing grass clippings from your own yard, you could mix this organics with that. Since we have our own landscaping operation and our own mulching, you have this separate organics can, but you can put in, like I said, leaves or house plants that you have or flowers. You can also include that in there. Next page. The things that you don't want to put in the organics bin is cardboard, glass, metal, pet waste, plastic, polystyrene. All of these are things that should be recycled or put in the regular trash, not in the organics. Next slide. Before being placed in the organic cart, organic waste may be bagged in a compostable or paper bags wrapped in newspaper. So that's how you can put it in there. You can put it in a coffee can. Also, CNR&R is going to make available for purchase a can that you can have or a container that you can have in your house. If you'd like to purchase that from them, you can contact them directly on that. But you can use newspaper. So when you go to the grocery store and get your paper bags instead of plastic, you can certainly use that, wrap it up in newspaper, or you can, like I said, if you have small amounts, you can use a coffee can type of environment and then pour it into the recycling bin. Please always close the lid on the carts once disposing the organic waste. It's appreciated. Next page. So the finding the closest organics recycling container is probably going to be one of the most important things that we make sure our residents are aware of. So you can visit the city's website to use an integrated map of their organic cart locations. So if you go to cityoflagunawoods.org/LWV organics, there's a map there, and you can click on your address and you can click on where you live, and that shows you the closest available organic cart for you. They are going to take they have a phone system that they have set up. You can call them at 949-625-6735. And then you can also email Laguna Woods-recycles@crnrmail.com. These are the 3 contact points to make sure if you have any questions with regard to your organic recycling container or any of your trash questions. Next page. Again, contacting CR&R for all trash-related questions is the key here. Resident Services is no longer the place to go, as we have been in the past. They have a call center set up for CR&R to handle these calls and questions, along with their emails, and to read those and get in contact with us if there's a necessity for it. For all trash, recycling, organics, recycling questions and concerns, again, there on the sheet is the telephone number, 949-625-6735, and the 2 emails, CR&R and also the City of Laguna Woods. Next page. And that concludes that report. I'll turn it over to Siobhan real quickly, but I do want to say one thing. As Robert mentioned, this is my last full board meeting, and I just want to send my appreciation to the 3rd board and all of its members, past and present, that have worked with myself in the last 3 years. It's been a lot of good times, and I enjoyed working with this board in the Laguna Woods Village, and we've accomplished a lot and went through a lot, obviously, with the COVID and everything we've experienced in the last couple of years. But I sincerely appreciate all of you and your participation, especially as volunteers, and how much that means. And I truly believe that there's good things moving forward for the village, and especially under the leadership of Siobhan as your new CEO. So with that, I'll turn it over to Siobhan.
Thank you, Jeff. Honorable President, members of the board, I have 2 quick announcements this morning, please. The first one is the transportation informational meeting regarding the H-well proposal. that will be held this Friday, January 21st at 9:30 a.m. This meeting will be virtual. It will also be broadcast live on Village TV, TV6. Staff will monitor, address, and answer questions via the virtual chat box, or residents may submit questions ahead of time to the meeting email address, which is meeting@vmsinc.org. Again, that's meeting@vmsinc.org. And then secondly, the first of the community mulch days will be held January 21st through 24th at clubhouses 3, 4, and 5. This is where residents can get mulch generated by landscape services for personal use. And please bring your shovel and container to pick up the mulch. And again, that's January 21st through 24th at clubhouses 3, 4, and 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Siobhan, and thank you, Jeff. And so, Jeff, again, we wish you well. All righty, moving on to the consent calendar. These are items that are submitted by committee to be entered into by a single board motion. Can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar? I see Annie moves. Can I get a second? I see James Cook is our second for the consent calendar. Kush, you have your hand up?
Yes, I have a request from Jeff. If we can please have that presentation emailed to us. It was very nice, had a lot of information, but I couldn't capture much of it because it was going too fast. Okay. About the waste.
Certainly. Right. We'll get that to you.
Awesome. Right. Thank you very much.
All right. We have a motion on the floor to approve the consent calendar. Hearing no discussion, all those, I will then assume by consent that the consent calendar is approved unless I hear otherwise. Hearing no dissension, the consent calendar is approved as represented in the agenda. All right, on to unfinished business. We're up to item number 13. We have a motion to introduce a revised resolution for stepping stone policy and guidelines. Director Jarrett, do you want to have something to read related to that?
Yes, I do. I'm going to read the resolution. We went over the whole project the last couple of months, so today I'm going to sum it up with the resolution. Stepping stone policy and guidelines. Whereas on January 16, 2007, the Board of Directors adopted Resolution 030702 with approval to revoke Alteration Standard Section 36, Stepping Stones. Whereas Resolution 030702 revoked the standard for stepping stones and required a variance application to the Architectural Committee. Whereas the Landscape Committee determined that stepping stones are temporary in nature and are placed within common area landscaping. Whereas the Landscape Committee determined that requiring a variance application is unduly burdensome for members, and the process could be simplified by use of the landscape request form. Now, therefore, be it resolved, January 18, 2022, the Board of Directors approves the change from variance request to landscape request form, and consideration thereof shall be performed by the Landscape Committee. Resolved further, all new stepping stone installations shall be performed following the attached stepping stone guidelines, and all existing stepping stone installations not previously approved by variance or standard shall be removed through the compliance process or at resale, whichever occurs first. Resolved further, all new stepping stone installations shall be performed following the attached stepping stone guidelines, and all existing stepping stone installations not previously approved by variance or standard shall be removed through the compliance process or at resale, whichever occurs first. Resolved further, Resolution 030702, adopted January 16, 2007, is hereby superseded in their entirety and no longer in effect. Resolved further, that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the resolution? I see Annie's hand up and I see Cush's second. So the motion is on the floor. The resolution is on the floor as a motion now. Is there any discussion? Ira Lewis.
Now, the example isn't exactly as clear as it should be. If you look at it was pointed out to me that the picture shows nothing but the layout of the Casa Grande, but doesn't really show what you're supposed to do with the layout in showing the stones. So it's insufficient instructions for the user, basically. That's on page 9 of 12, agenda item 13A.
I'm trying to get to that page, so.
Yeah, so there's a lot of old paper here.
Yeah, 9 of 12. Okay. All righty. Director Laws. Can't hear you, Director Laws. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think the sample is incomplete. I think that if somebody submitted this, it would be rejected. And so, or it should be, based upon what the process is supposed to be. So I don't think this is complete enough to be approved. Thank you.
So let me ask this question of both Director Lewis and Director Laws. If what you're referring to is just a single item on page 9 of 12 of 13A, so in other words, the diagram of where the stones might be placed and how they would be placed, that would support the rest of the material. Is there anything else in the rest of the resolution or the other material that you have concerns about?
There's not. I think it's a fine thing to do. I just don't think it's complete. I've been saying so for a couple of months now, and you know, I don't think that I would trust that it would get done correctly without us looking at it and voting on it. So I'll be voting no.
There would need to be some kind of instruction on the diagram page saying, please draw in your stepping stone placements or something to that effect, and something on the other part of the description and location request on the previous page, just to reference that you should do that. And then it'll be clear for everybody. There won't be any issues. I think it's good that the landscape department's going to handle it. It should never have been with a variance. So if you just clarify it, make it just so simple that you can't make a mistake.
So let me ask this question. This has been on 28-day notice. If we send it back, it'll have to come back out again for another additional 28-day notice for those modifications. Does there, with those suggested changes by both Laws and Lewis, if we were to approve this on condition of the satisfactory representation of those two items, the one on the diagram itself and then the one on the page before, could we approve this conditionally? Would that be satisfactory? I'm just trying to see about, rather than wasting another 2-3 months and having this come back, if we could request that, and then if it comes back next month with those conditions met, that we would then formally finish the conditional approval process. I'm just looking for a way to kind of move forward if it's at all possible.
Yeah, I think that's fine with me.
That would work for me. So if I understand correctly, you're saying that it would come back to the board next, so that we could look at the updated process next.
Correct. That we would conditionally approve this. The conditions being that we would have to see the updated page 9 of 12, which is the chart of the Casa Grande about where, how to fill in or how to just place the stepping stones in that chart. And then there would be a statement on page either 7 of 12 or 8 of 12 that specifically says what you have to do on the chart.
Yes.
All right. Can I ask then that we amend the existing motion? Would one of you gentlemen like to make an amendment to the existing motion then to that effect?
Sure. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I motion that we conditionally approve this based upon, for review next board meeting, reflecting the changes that we just discussed.
Okay.
Which is updating page 8 to reflect the
directions.
The directions, and page 9 to reflect the map.
The map. Okay. Can I get a second to that amendment to the motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Lewis seconds it. Is there now any discussion about the amendment to the original motion? Director Engdahl. You're muted, Director Engdahl. Director Engdahl, you're still muted.
Gotcha, I'm sorry. You need to tell the people to use a diagram of their own manner and thereon show the location of the stepping stones.
Correct. This is just
Otherwise,
a sample.
somebody's going to pick up this diagram and say, that doesn't look like mine.
Correct. Good point. All right. Any other discussion about the amendment to the original motion? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and assume then by consent that the amendment to the original motion is approved. Hearing no dissent, the amendment is approved and actually becomes a substitute motion for the original motion. So now the motion on the floor is to approve the revised resolution for stepping stone policy and guidelines, conditional upon receiving next month an updated diagram and directions. That's the motion that's now on the floor. Any discussion about the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please. I'll assume again by consent unless I hear otherwise. Director Lewis.
No, I just.
Oh, no, I'm going to go by consent unless I hear otherwise. So, not hearing any dissent, the motion then is approved. The conditional motion is approved. All right. Thank you. Now we're on to new business, 14A. Entertain a motion to approve a partial reimbursement for repairs and restoration at 3067B. Lynn, do you have something to read for us?
Yes, I do.
Please.
All right. The Third M&C Committee recommends that the board approve a partial reimbursement to Mrs. Lois Wilson, the non-occupant owner of 367B, for plumbing repair and dry down expenses she incurred related to an in-wall plumbing leak at her manor in the amount of $1,604.12. On November the 22nd, 2021, Mrs. Lois, the non-occupant owner, reported that the hallway carpet in her unit was wet from an unknown source. An emergency service order was entered in the database at 9:13 a.m. and the Mutual's in-house plumbing foreman printed the service order at 9:20 a.m. and assigned it to a plumbing technician. There were 56 reported plumbing emergencies received that day. Guess that was their big storm. And a plumbing technician was unable to respond until 3:25 p.m. The handwritten note on the service order states that an outside plumber was already performing a repair to the Mutual's water pipe, and the dry down company was setting up equipment when the in-house plumber arrived. Staff was informed that a pinhole leak was found in the hot water line between the hallway closet and an adjacent bathroom. On November 23rd, a damage restoration coordinator made a same-day appointment to inspect the unit for damage. The coordinator was informed by the occupant that the non-occupant owner contacted her insurance company and hired their own plumber and restoration company. An air scrubber and a dehumidifier were set up inside the hallway closet. During the inspection, secondary damage of mold was found on the hall closet walls near the plumbing manifold where the copper line was repaired. This indicates the leak had gone unnoticed for some time. On January 3rd, the M&C committee reviewed the staff report with supporting documents and asked questions of staff and Mrs. Wilson. The senior management analyst, Laurie Chevalier, summarized the report and answered questions from the committee. A motion was made and unanimously approved to recommend the board approve a reimbursement be paid to Mrs. Wilson in the amount of $1,604.12 for the cost she incurred for plumbing repairs and dry down expenses related to a copper pipe supply line leak at her manor. The committee recommends that the $587 paid to Patriot Environmental Lab Services not be reimbursed. Do we hear a motion to approve the partial reimbursement to Ms. Wilson for these repairs?
Okay. Can I get a motion then to approve the reimbursement to for repairs and restoration at 3067B in the amount of $1,604.12? I see Director Cook moves. Is there a second? Director Bada seconds. Okay. Is there any discussion? I was not in attendance at the M&C meeting on the 3rd of January, so I can't speak to this issue at all. Anybody else want to speak to it or have any comments? Hearing none, I will go ahead then again and assume by consent that this motion to reimburse the owner of 3067B in the amount of $1,604.12 is approved. Hearing no dissent, motion is approved. We now move to 14B, entertain a motion to lower the lease cap to 25%. We have a number of members who are in attendance, I understand, who want to speak. We also have a large number of email comments related to this. We will get to them in a minute once we put the motion on the floor, even though I hope that we actually will send this back to committee and not move this forward at this point. So can I get a motion to approve the 25% lease cap? I see Annie McCary moves. Is there a second? I see Ralph Engdahl second. So the motion is on the floor at this point in time. Lynn, why don't you read the motion for the sake of following Robert's Rules and Procedure. And then we'll move to director comments and then to member comments.
Director Jarrett, your microphone is currently muted.
You're muted, Director Jarrett. Director Jarrett, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, Grant, can you read the motion, please?
The motion? Absolutely. So the motion is to...
Resolution, yeah.
Did you want me to read the motion or the resolution?
Read the resolution.
Oh, I can read the resolution.
Yeah, that's where we are, is the resolution.
But I thought you said read the motion. All right, just a moment, please.
I'm sorry, I meant the resolution.
I have it here. All right. Well, reading the boy, I went ahead of myself. Are we reading the motion on the lease cap?
Yes.
All right, hold on. Please, hold on. I had everything bookmarked.
You don't have it. I have it in front of me. I can read it if you want.
I've got it here. All right, here we go. Leasing cap and lease waiting list policy. Whereas Third Laguna Hills Mutual is authorized to manage, operate, and maintain housing at Laguna Woods Village. And whereas Third operates as a common interest development in accordance with the Davis-Sterling Common Interest Development Act. And whereas AB 3182 regarding rental restrictions was enacted into law and became effective January 1, 2021. And whereas Third established a 30% lease cap in 2008 and now desires to align its restrictions with the new law prohibiting rental restrictions to less than 25% of separate interests in the community. Now therefore be resolved, the Board of Directors approves an adjustment of the rental cap from 30% to 25%, canceling and superseding Resolution 03-2026. Resolved further that the officers and agents of the corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution.
Okay, discussion about the resolution from members. Director Lewis.
I think we need to send this back after doing a little research. There's no reasonableness clause. California has reasonableness statute that when we do things like this, it requires it so that if a person has hardship, let's say they go off military service or they have to go off and somebody gets sick and they leave for a year, the ability to rent may be hampered by a cap, and that would be unreasonable under the California state law, as well as removal of rights that you got when you purchased. Many legal opinions are online about the specific subject, saying it should only be done through a CC&R adjustment, not any way else. Otherwise, it could be challenged in court. And thirdly, we've never reached a 30% cap. I think we're at 26 or 27 at this point, percent rentals, and without really any problems. So I'm saying that we really don't even need a rental cap at this point. And if we did put one in, you'd have to add all these other clauses and possibly have a CC&R change to make it all legal and hardened. So I'm voting no on this.
Okay. Any other directors? Director Cook.
Yes. I think it's a little bit misleading when we're talking about the new law and the 25%. It's actually to do the opposite for those HOAs that have limits below 25% or even at zero. That is the purpose, is to raise it up to at least, that's a minimum required by this new legislation. I also feel that the resolution that was done in 2008, making the cap at 30%, was done by the wrong mechanism. It should have been done as an amendment to the CC&Rs at that time. And as such, I think it's really unenforceable. We've never had the problem of litigation because we've never reached the 30% cap. But if we reach that 30% cap, all owners prior to 2008 would be grandfathered in anyway. But if they weren't grandfathered in, it would set up many lawsuits. And now by lowering it to 25%, I think you're opening a can of worms because we're already over the 25% on our leases. And you're going to be restricting people from using their property rights to be able to lease their property. And in these economic times, there's going to be situations where that transpires. And in court cases, hardships, anything else are included. So I think we would lose at any point in this if litigation comes out. And because of that, we really shouldn't open this can of worms. That's my opinion, and I'll be voting no on this. And I'll also like to go back and look at the 2008 resolution to see if it's even feasible. Because again, it should have been done through a CCNR amendment by the vote of the whole membership, because you're decreasing property values. And by it being in the CCNRs, when escrow is done, lenders and buyers would be aware of this cap, because they're not in the CCNRs. They aren't part of the paperwork that you would see knowing exactly what you're buying. So I think we're already got a 30% cap that's unenforceable, and to change it to 25% would be ridiculous. That's my opinion.
Okay, Director Bada.
I also want to bring up another point, and that is that we have a mechanism created which makes buyers buy units for their parents and make them renters, and that increases our rental numbers. Actually, I don't agree with that system to make the parents renters, because it's creating an unnecessary burden on the family to be vigilant to renew the rental applications and all that kind of stuff. And that would, if those people are not renters, our rental numbers would be way low, because the children are not actually renting the place to collect money from the parents, but it's just the mechanism that is required by the Laguna Woods, I would say the mutuals, to be able to do that. So I think we need to look at both this and that issue together. And if we were to abolish that requirement, because if the children qualify or the parents qualify together, they can all be on the title. And that would reduce the work on our department also that they do. So I don't think I agree with this rental cap increase.
Okay, any other discussion? Director Engdahl.
I've been on the, what is it, the
Resident Policy and Compliance Committee?
Not resident policy, but the board that reviews.
Executive hearing.
Yes, that's the one. By far, I don't have numbers, but the biggest problems are rental problems. We cannot operate directly to the renter, to the leaser, or to the lessee rather, but rather we have to work through the lessor. And this results in no end of problems with certain lessees. A lot of them are great, there's no problem, but some are just also difficult to handle. I'd be in favor of this, at least of the move. I don't know exactly how the best way to handle it. Maybe it will require a change in CCNRs, but certainly a reduction in the rental capacity. And there can be exceptions for ways to work around what Kush just mentioned. But I would be strongly in favor of the reduction in whatever legal way it takes to do it.
Okay. Any other comments?
We do have resident comments.
We do, but just a second. We'll get to the resident comments in a minute, because since the people took the time to submit comments or are here and want to speak, I certainly want to give them that opportunity. But I would hope that after we hear the resident comments, we'll actually get a motion to send this back to committee. That's my hope at this point. So, Grant, let's go ahead with people who are in attendance who want to speak to this issue. Each person will have 3 minutes. And if you would please, if there's anybody in attendance who wants to speak to this.
The first person is Madeline Whiteman.
All right, Ms. Whiteman, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Mr. Cook said a lot of the things that I wanted to say. I believe that limiting, well, the state initiated this policy to have a minimum of rental units in HOA communities. And that is because, one, there is a housing shortage in the state, and two, because a lot of the HOAs limited the amount of rentals and actually had no rentals. And I know this from different associations throughout the state. So this was to make more available. And what you're trying to do is to reduce the amount of units that are available, which was not the intention of this bill that was passed. So I really, and as also was said during the discussion with board members, at 30%, there hasn't been a problem. And as you put in your missive that you sent out, it's currently 26%, which seems very manageable and reasonable. I do agree that there would more than likely be lawsuits. You would be restricting owners' property rights, which I don't think you want to do. I just think that this needs to stay where it is or not at all, but not to diminish what we already have and what we as owners were under the impression when we bought here that we had. So I don't know if I'm covering everything that I wanted to cover. I do have something in chat, which I guess just the board sees. This is my first time speaking at one of these, so I'm not quite sure, what how to cover everything that I want to cover. But I urge you all to vote no. If something works, why try to do something different with it? Thank you.
Thank you.
I will now bring in the next speaker, Charles Maksudian.
Mr. Maksudian, can you hear us?
I'm sorry, I was just trying to get this.
We can hear you. We can hear you. So please,
thank you, everyone.
Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the time. I want to, first of all, echo Ms. Lewis's comments and also Mr. Cook's comments and Bada's comments. I think those are all on point and should be highly considered. In addition to that, I also want to bring the additional concern that the process of having those who have to be on a waiting list should the rental exceed the 25% is another task that the association is going to be burdened with. That seems to be an added cost that should probably not be burdened at this point, given that we already seem to be running a very, very big budget with our last year's $100 a month increase in association dues. The last thing we need is additional costs added to to burden the Laguna Woods Village Third Mutual. In addition to that, I want to present myself as someone who is a owner, unoccupied owner. I am underage to actually be a resident, and the reason why I bought the unit that we currently own is for my father, who is elderly. He is on Social Security. He does not qualify himself, and this was our way as his son to provide a place for him to live. He enjoyed the facility for a little over a year until he ended up having to go to a different facility because of medical assistance that was otherwise not available. I find myself having to put that unit up for rent at this point, and this unreasonableness that was discussed is a huge component to what I just recently had to go through in the last 12 months. In addition to that, I really, really encourage Bada's comments about the idea that parents or anyone who lives in a unit that has a space, I guess they are, a one bedroom has 2 occupants potentially, 2 bedroom, I assume 4. But as long as there is a resident process that could get some sort of an ID without having to be qualified or listed as a renter, seems to be a very, very good process to reduce what appears to be a high rental rate in the community, because they are not. They are family members who are living there. There are nephews, cousins, nieces, whatever it may be, but they are not renters. They are occupants. If you're renting it out exclusively, you might consider that, but I would like to see what these numbers are without family members being provided a place by extended family from this percentage that's there. And that's all I have to say today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is, I apologize for the name, so it's Nasir Abba Zeta. I will move them now.
Mr. Abbas Zeta, can you hear us? Hello, Mr.
Okay. Do you have my voice now?
Yes, we do. Please, go ahead.
Thanks. I won't repeat everything that others have been saying. I sent an email with my objections to putting a cap. I just highlight one thing. I think 26% by itself doesn't show that there's a problem right now. And if you've been at 30% and you have not had any problems, I don't know why artificially reducing it to a state minimum makes sense. I think others have highlighted the main objection that I have, and that's you really devaluing the property within the association. And it would be a wrong move to go forward with this motion. Like I said, I've already sent in with all of my objections, so I won't repeat everything I've said before. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, sir.
The next speakers are Gail Kramer and Mike Lynch.
Grant, is there a problem bringing them in?
It looks like we are having some difficulties getting them in. If you would like, we can always go to email comments and then come back.
Perfectly fine. Then if we can get them in a little bit, we'll be happy to do that. So we'll go to Connie for email comments.
Sure. I have 15 email comments. Okay. Imsukli 4025 2D. This message is to get our board members' attention on recently proposed rent cap issue, and I do object the reductions of the rent cap from 30% to 25%. As a resident owner and a realtor, I see this change will bring down our resale values and incentives to buy in the Laguna Wood condos when the current monthly HOA assessment is already making the buyers to reconsider. Here's a few facts we as owner, also you as board members of the condos need to reconsider. One, buyers who purchase a condo for parents due to their parents' short income, although their assets are enough, become tenants of the condo children bought. Parents shouldn't be counted as tenants, which adds to the rent cap. Two, buyers who are not retired yet or younger than 55 years old but wish to purchase for their retirement few years later are unable to buy. Third, residents who rely on the income from their second condo rental property. This rent cap reduction will affect all present and future owners and could be detrimental to all of us in the future. Please, dear board members, vote against this proposed policy change on rental cap and protect both you and our assets. Larry Smith, 3415A. We understand the board's concern in respect to controlling the number of lease manors in our community. That said, the new mandate fails to address our part-time residents, many of whom lease their manors to others when they are aware. We suggest the new policy be revised as follows. Anyone currently leasing their manor on either a full-time or part-time basis would be able to continue leasing as long as they can secure a new tenant within 90 days of an existing tenant vacating. The 90-day mandatory period to lease shall exclude any period of time when a manor is owner-occupied. Manor owner with current permits to lease the properties will not be required to reapply for a lease permit unless the manor goes unleased for more than 90 days. The 90-day period shall be observed only during those periods of time that the manor is unoccupied by its respective owners. Graham Anthony, 23873E. I own a manor with my 87-year-old mom. Someday she may no longer be there. Should the proposed cap on percentage of rental units be lowered below what the market typically sets, and I'm forbidden to rent it, then I'm forced with the decision to sell or eat the cost of the manor that I would only visit occasionally, making it pure consumption. By lowering the cap on the number of manors that can be leased below what the market sets, you put further downward pressure on the value of the manors. As with the towers, I will be forced to eat monthly clause with no way to recoup it or be forced to sell it. If I did keep it and couldn't get any value, I would think twice about investing into it. Net a lease cap below what the market says will cost, in my opinion, under-invested, more worn properties and lower prices. Perhaps if you explain your goals and objectives for the lease cap, I might be able to get on board, but I see nothing but destruction of value in a lease cap. Finally, if you do have a lease cap, I think when a tenant vacates one property, there should be a lottery for the right to lease among all owners who wish to lease their properties. Gail Shapiro, 5479B. I hear the arguments that the biggest compliance issues are about renters. I suggest that the number is very small in percentage of the total rental units. I object to the reduction of the rent cap from 30% to 25%. And it is my understanding that we have never even reached 30% rentals. As a resident owner, I only see this change as a harmful to our resales. I will eliminate the following. One, buyers who must purchase for parents to reside in order to fulfill the financial purchase requirement and then must establish a lease to that parent per the present rules. Two, buyers who do not meet the age requirement yet wish to eventually move into the village when of age. Third, buyers who rely on the income from a rental property. These rent cap reductions affect all present and future owners and could be detrimental to all of us in the future. Please vote against this proposed rental cap policy change. Alfred and Nadine Messner, 3071B. We strongly support lowering the lease cap to 25% as it makes for a better and more involved community. Mary Kasor, 3365 1B. Please leave the third mutual leasing as is. After 34 years in the medical field, I have no retirement. I have condo rental that I need to supplement my income. Wolfgang Cotter, 5361B. As an input to your upcoming discussion, I fully support the plan to limit the number of leases in third mutual to 25%. Art Krilovetsky, 2282C. I strongly oppose third mutual or any company, committee, association, or person changing leasing cap. There is absolutely no need or value in third mutual regulating lease markets or term. Just follow the state law for minimum leasing capacity. Do not establish or change maximum or caps. Leasing caps will harm members. Property values will drop. Ability to lease the property is a big factor in assessing property value. Investor will not buy properties that they cannot lease out. Resident will not pay for properties where they do not have an option to lease out. Existing residents, especially those who are retired, often travel or choose to lease in a different state for 1 to 2 years and must be able to lease out their property until they come back. Inability to do so will destroy their cash flows, their lifestyle, and their retirement dream. Members buy and have bought properties for their retirement but are not ready to retire yet. Such members must have an option to lease out their properties until they are ready to retire and make those properties their primary residence. Existing owners who lease out their properties will not be able to do so in the future because of the cap. This will negatively impact their cash flows and their net worth. 90 days is not enough time to repair a unit and lease it out after tenants move out. Landlords will just lease under maintained property, which will hurt rent value, property value, market value, and community image. It will also add potential liabilities for both landlords and members. 90 days is not even enough to evict a tenant who fails to move out after contract expiration, let alone fix the property and lease it again. Landlords who cannot lease out their property in 90 days will either create fake contracts or lease at a lower prices to unworthy tenants who will not maintain the property and negatively impact the image and the value of the community. Those who bought property for investment purposes will sue and likely win third mutual and members because the cap will significantly decrease the property value and the investor's cash flow. Lawsuits and settlements will increase already high association fees. When landlords cannot lease out their properties, they will stop paying association fees and default on loans. Such unpaid fees will need to be absorbed by other members through yet again increased association fee. Loan defaults will result in unoccupied, unmaintained properties that will harm the community image and values of all properties in the community. Stop interfering in the property and lease markets and focus on delivering value to members through high quality, cost-effective maintenance. Stop trying to break what works well and focus on fixing what's broken.
3 minutes have expired.
What's broken, let others do so. Okay. Catherine Flat, 3249B. I'm a third member and a real estate agent who daily deals with owners selling their condos and buyers who will become third mutual members, as well as people who lease both long and short term. I'm very familiar with their concern. The following are some of the reasons I'm strongly opposed to lowering the rent cap. I think the major reason that condos have a higher price value than co-op is that condo can be investment property. They can be bought for other people to live in. Because owners are not required to live in the unit, people below 55-year-old can buy, thereby increasing the market values because of the high demand. Most people buying are over 55, but this allows younger people to buy for their parents. In the 13 years that I've lived in Laguna Wood Village, the condo lease percentage have hovered around 27 to 28%. Essentially, this proposed decrease is lower than the usual percentage and would adversely affect many owners. Since more than 1 in 4 condos are currently leased, it's obvious that being able to lease condos is a strong draw to buyers and current owners. The more buyers want to buy, the better the property values. Many condo buyers who plan to live in the unit themselves prefer Laguna Woods condos to co-op because they are assured that beneficiaries can inherit the condo if they meet the financial requirement. Beneficiaries can lease the condo until they are ready to move in themselves or to sell it in an appropriate time. Many members have a condo in Laguna Woods as a second home. The way this proposal reads now, if they stay in their own Laguna Woods condo for more than 90 days, they will lose the right to lease it while they are gone. Obviously, that will not be good for those current members. As things stand now, children who buy condos for parents are required to lease the condos to parents. They cannot let parents occupied without a lease. This increases the percentage of leases. This proposed decreases in the number of leases allowed would make it difficult to impossible for many children to buy condos for parents. The current 30% lease cap was based on FHA loan requirement. I think third is not FHA approved now anyways. I have heard that 80% of condo purchases are cash. Why is it necessary to lower the existing 30% cap? It would be detrimental to so many third members. Paul Santoro, 5353P. I have owned in Third Laguna Wood Mutual since 2003 and resided in the unit since 2010. I'm a licensed real estate broker. I must voice my concern about the upcoming agenda item regarding Third Mutual leasing cap. I understand that AB 3182 amended California Civil Code Section 4740, also known as the Davis-Sterling Act, which allows the limitations or prohibitions of rentals, and also adds sections 4741, which allows common interest developments to adopt a rental restriction and construction guidance. I'm not an attorney, nor am I intending to provide legal advice or guidance. I'm merely reminding the board that the recommendation with Davis-Sterling of 25% of the common interest development is a floor, not a cap nor a ceiling. As stated in your most recent email to the Third Mutual member, the mutual presently stands at about 26% lease unit of the possible 6,102 unit. To rise to the current floor of 30%, an additional 244 unit would have to immediately be turned to lease unit. I find that possibility to be most unlikely since there are only 9 units available for lease within Third in the multiple listing service. Additionally, I also find your statement that with snowbirds arriving, the percentage is likely to increase an additional point or two, would require an additional 61 to 122 units being turned into a rental, again, highly unlikely. At the present time, market forces are adequate to maintain the existing Third Mutual lease policy presently in place. The following statement from your most recent correspondence states, anyone currently leasing their manor would be able to continue leasing as long as they can secure a new tenant within 90 days of an existing tenant vacating. Also, if an existing tenant signs a new lease within 90 days of the expiration of the old lease, then the manor can continue to be leased. This intended action will most certainly have unintended consequences, such as a current Third Mutual owner has a home in Arizona and a home in Third Mutual. They lease that property for 6 months while they are residing in Arizona. They move into the Third Mutual property at the end of that 6th lease. They will not intend to lease it again for another 6 months while they reside in the Third Mutual. They will be hard-pressed to meet the requirement of securing a new tenant within the 90-day window requirement at the end of the existing lease. Other possible unintended consequences are explained at www.jdsupra.com. The article is California clears the path
3 minutes
for
have
rentals
expired.
in residential common interest development. Jafar Bazaz, 2285B. Is the reference state law establishing a maximum or a minimum requirement? If it is establishing a minimum, why exceeding it considered by the community detrimental to the Third Mutual members? 90 days interval for a new lease, as suggested, would not be sufficient time in case of a major remodeling, such as remodeling a bathroom. Just obtaining a demolition permit took me more than 3 months delay because of the pandemic. Diane Triantis, 2384 IE. I would like to convey my support for reducing the number of lease manner allowed in the third mutual to no more than 25%. Rentals exceeding that percentage decrease the value of our property and the quality of life in the village. Renters do not have skin in the game the way residence owners do. Owners pay a lot in dues to live here and do not want the community to be more like a senior apartment complex or seasonal resort for snowbirds and an investment for absentee owners. For most of us, this is our home 365 days a year. I encourage the vote to vote for the 25% cap on rentals. Kathleen Wilson, 3510 3C. I'm opposed to reducing the percentage of unit that may be leased at any one time. If a change is made, the percentage of rentals allowed should be adjusted up rather than down. Why would Third Mutual seek to reduce our maximum down to the state minimum for leasing? Shortage of rentable housing is a problem in our state and probably no less of a problem for those 55 plus. Please remember that owners should have financial flexibility to use their property in a way that is best for their personal situation, so long as residents, tenants, and owners alike follow the rules and keep our community strong. As owners, we already have more than enough oversight in leasing our units to tenants. We own our investment in Laguna Woods and will continue to see the ownership as an asset until we are overburdened with Third Mutual, making ownership troublesome. Susan Smallwood, 3456B. As a resident owner and resident landlord, the argument that a large portion of renters are in compliance over various rule infractions, and I would say that it is equally applied to resident owners. Before you make a decision against renters, you really need to evaluate what percentage are they non-compliant against the percentage of resident owners. I suggest that the number is very small in percentage of the total rental unit. I object to the reduction of the rent cap from 30% to 25%. And it is my understanding that we have never even reached 30% rental. Also, there's nothing written in our CCNR that has a cap limit. That would be against our governing document. As a resident owner and resident landlord, this will eliminate the following. One, I feel I'm providing home for seniors who are unable to purchase in here due to the financial requirement, but are able to pay the rental fee. Two, residents who rely on the income from rental property, as this is the best investment compared to the amount of interest rates being paid on savings account, etc. Third, we have seniors who just want to rent and have the landlords take care of the upkeep within the home. We also have wonderful snowbird residents who rent for 6 months and less. Putting a 3-month requirement to release to stay within the allowable percentage rate is not feasible. Fourth, we have buyers who are not quite ready to move in here and would like to purchase and lease out until such time as they are either of age or are ready to move into the village. This rent cap reduction affects all present and future owners and could be detriment to all of us in the future. I urge you to vote against this proposed rental cap policy change. Jeffrey Wu, 551838A. I read the suggestion from the VMS staff about lease authorization, lower cap to 25%. From what I know, the state of California only mandates a community has to allow at least 25% of unit to be leased out, and that says 25% is the minimum and not 25% is the maximum. I do not understand how lowering the lease cap from 30 to 25% in order to align with state legislative guidelines. And I do not understand the reason to make this recommendation that will benefit the third board residents. The reason to make this recommendation also stated that by making 25 as maximum, it will increase our third mutual board property value, which is contrary to all the business economic theory. Only more investors and existing resident owner want to invest property here in the third mutual. The property value will increase when the lease cap is set to the 25%. There will be fewer investor and current resident who will buy the third mutual board properties, and there are fewer competition. The price will go down. That is very simple supply and demand situation. I request the staff who represented the recommendation and the director who made this motion to tell us what is wrong on this supply and demand situation. Two more questions I have are how increase the pool of owner-occupied unit and potentially reduce the finance and refinancing fee incurred by buyers and existing owners, and every day that the lower percentage is not adopted enables more owners to be protected by the 30% cap now in effect. Please explain what is finance and refinancing fees incurred by the buyers and existing owners, and what is enables more owner to be protected by the 30% cap now in effect. If the owners are enabled to be protected by the 30% cap lease percentage, what is wrong? Here is the record. Lease authorization lower cap to 25% at present. The average leasing percentage in third is 26%. The timing of a reduction in the lease cap could be beneficial to the corporation, while the actual rental percentage is now close to the more desirable lease percentage. Every day that the lower percentage is not adopted enables more owners to be protected by the 30% cap now in effect. One of the benefits of the lower cap is a possible increase in the property value that is desirable for the third mutual. The existing policy can be easily amended to capture the lower rate. On December 28, 2021, the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee reviewed presented lease authorization lower cap to 25%. That concludes all the email comments.
In regards
You're muted, Robert.
to the speakers for that are on Zoom, I no longer see the hand raised. Here we are. I will move them over now. Gail Kramer and Mike Lynch.
Thank you. Okay, Gail Kramer and Mike Lynch, we see you. Can you hear us? Ms. Kramer and Mr. Lynch, can you hear us?
I see that they...
You're muted.
Here we go. Yep.
Okay, Ms. Kramer and Mr. Lynch, the floor is yours. Ms. Kramer, Mr. Lynch, can you hear us?
Hello.
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Sorry about that. Just want to add this, that the intent, this is off the internet, but the intent of the bill currently at the state is to help combat the housing and homelessness crisis in California. And it seems that the spirit of the law requires that, yet what this committee is trying to do is lower the rental cap. That seems to be in violation of the law, or at least certainly the spirit of the law, and I wonder if that will invite some retaliation from the state down the road. Who knows? I don't really know. And The second thing we'd like to lend our support to is the 90-day requirement to get modifications done to your unit seems to be, on the face of it, totally ridiculous. I mean, how, you're under the pressure of what your contractor is doing, and the contractor finds problems, you may just be seems to be ridiculous. So that's where we're coming from. We hope that the rental cap stays at the 30% or more, and that the 90-day requirement that they're talking about does not get approved. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That sounds like it takes care of all of the comments, both email and in person. So we have, Grant, is there something else?
That is all of the speakers that I see.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion on the floor. We have a couple of options. We could either table it or we could take a vote, and if the vote is negative, then it would die. So what are the wishes? Is the wish I would prefer that we send it back to committee and let the committee look at it and consider it, and if it could die, it might die in committee and never come back here. That would be my personal preference, but Director Laws, I see your hand, and I see Director Cook.
Yes, I was going to move that we send this back to committee for reconsideration and potential
whatever.
Resolution, yes, whatever.
Director Cook, you were next.
I would like to vote on it and dismiss it now and quit wasting time, because I think it's something that should absolutely not be done.
Okay. Director McCary, I see your hand.
Thank you, President Munchnick. I would prefer that we send this back to committee and have the committee decide whether it is worth the effort of bringing it back or whether there can be some modifications.
Okay, Director Bada.
I would agree with Director Cook that we just let this die where it is.
Director Rain-Sosak.
The main reason I would like to see it go back to committee is because of one of the points that was brought up, which is people who purchase the unit for their parents. If we let it die, we never address that concern. So I would like us to look at the entire issue, because there are probably problems with the existing one. And so for that reason, I would like to see it go back to committee, because we do have some unresolved issues, and some of those relate to comments that were made today, and several of them. So is why I would support sending it back to committee.
Okay, Director Lewis.
Donna makes a good point with her comment, but I do believe there's more wrong with this than right with this. And so I'm with Director Cook in saying let's vote on it and kill it now, because there's too many things wrong with it. It doesn't address so many things, and our 2008 resolution may be illegal as well. So we should probably revisit that one before we try to make something that we might end up eliminating that one as well. So that's my feeling.
Director Laws, I see your hand again, and I see Director Jarrett.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that by pushing it back to committee, I would hope that we would also look at the 30% current limit and whether that's appropriate as well. So if we just vote on it now and get rid of this specific motion of 25%, that doesn't address the 30% either. Thanks.
Director Jarrett. You're muted, Director Jarrett.
That was the issue I was going to mention about 2008 and why they made that change. I wasn't here at that time on the board, but I would imagine the reason they did that is because lenders will not, you can't get a mortgage in here if you have over 30% renters, from what I understand. And that's why, I don't know why we made it. I wasn't here, but I do know that you can't, I've been told you can't get a mortgage if you're over 30% renters. But I see Mr. Director Lewis is shaking his head. But I'd like to see it go back to committee.
Okay, Director Engdahl.
I remain unconvinced. However, I'm not sure that the way we're handling it is proper either. Maybe it should go back to committee and eventually be put into something that should be looked into by the committee.
Okay. Director Bada.
I would like to rephrase what I said. If we would review this whole thing and change the units that were bought by children for their parents to live and they became renters, and if we change that part, I'm sure that the whole number would come down, spiraling to about 10 to 15%, or maybe wherever it ends up. So there are a whole bunch of people who are staying here as renters who are parents and the units that were bought by children. So if we can review that part, it will change our perception to all this. That is the big thing. That is the big portion of this rent cap. If we separate, it will change many things.
Okay, Director Cook, I saw your hand kind of waving.
I bought in 2005 when there was no lease rental cap, and I had no problem securing a loan. So that information is misinformation as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, Director Engdahl, your hand is up again. Or you didn't take your hand down. You're muted, Director Engdahl.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm still unconvinced regarding the principle. However, I question the legal way to do it. I would continue to speak for those who bought a place expecting to have a nice, quiet community, and there's a lot of good renters. Don't get me wrong, but there's also, that's where a lot of our problems come in here. I'd really like to see a breakdown and see how much it costs us to chase down some of these problems that come from rental properties.
Okay, Director McCary.
I don't know how to get that, but it would be interesting to see.
Thank you.
I have personally owned.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I suggest that we ask Pamela Bashline to speak on this issue, as I see she's present, and she might be able to help us come to some kind of terms, whether to kill it now or take it back to committee. So I'd like to hear from Pamela Bashline.
Okay, Pamela, are you available to speak to us?
I am. Thank you so much. There were some comments made that I think are addressed by your current policy. The comment that there was no room for hardship, that the 90-day period was too short for certain actions, etc. So if the board would care to refer to sorry, I've gotten the wrong page. It would be page 6 of 8, Roman numeral 4. The title of the paragraph is Exemptions and Enforcement. And it gives the board the ability to make exceptions when a hardship is created. And so there is some wiggle room there. There was a comment that there is no reasonableness to the current policy, which this wait list has already been adopted by the board. The only changes to the document before you today is changing the number from 30% to 25%. So I think, although I'm not an attorney either, I believe the reasonableness clause is addressed by the exemptions and enforcement aspect. I agree that the corporation has not reached 30%. And the comment was made that by adopting the 25%, everybody who is already an owner is grandfathered by that 30% cap. The persons affected by the 25% cap would be future buyers beyond the date, should the board adopt this, that it became effective. So if the board chose to make this effective, they chose to adopt a policy modified somewhat in April of this year, the board could say this policy will not be effective until September or January 1, or whenever you deem it to be appropriate. Let me just take a look at my notes. And I don't have my glasses, which is a little bit of a problem. There was a comment about beneficiaries not being able to inherit, and this is related to United Mutual. That is misinformation. Beneficiaries in United, just like in Third, should they meet the membership requirements, income, assets, and in United's case, the age, can immediately begin leasing their unit. That is a result of this new legislation, or new as of January 1. I think my last comment would be that the persons who will be considering this revisit the definitions in your CC&Rs as to who may occupy a unit. It seems to me that there are three categories. An owner can occupy his unit. A non-owner can occupy the unit with an owner. Or third, one can be a lessee. And it's my understanding that those conditions are why individuals who purchase for parents must relegate the parents to a lessee status, irrespective if they charge $1 a month or no dollars a month. It changes that category. And that is per the CC&Rs that several people have suggested the board revisit with respect to a lease cap. You have some definitions already to work with. That concludes my comments, and I'm happy to follow through whatever the board's direction might be.
Okay, thank you, Pamela. Appreciate your comments. So where are we? Mr. Law, Director Laws, you wanted to send this back to committee. We have a motion on the floor to approve. So, Mr. Law, Director Laws, if you want to make a motion to send it back to committee, you need to make that motion now. Otherwise, we vote on the original motion up or down. So, what is your pleasure, Director Laws?
I will leave it be. I will not make a motion.
So we're going to vote this up or down at this point. All right. Hearing no other options, any other discussion? Director Lewis.
Yeah, it appears that after Ms. Bashline spoke, that she boiled it down to, we're talking about 1%. We're at 26% rental right now. We want this wants to move it down to 25, where the law, our regulations call for 30% right now. Why are we changing? I would modify my opinion to send this back to committee to let them do what they want to do and bring it back if they want to bring it back. But right now, we're just talking about 1%. And with that 1% change, we have to have a whole other waiting list, create rules. We're opening up a can of worms for 60 units, 61 units is basically what we're having to have another entire person manage, and a whole other set of rules go forth. So I would say send this back to committee. Maybe they would like to change that 25 back to 30. And with regards to Director Engdahl and his percentages, if you say, pick a percentage, let's say 5% of renters are not good renters. What percentage of owners are not good owners? And if you were to reduce that 5% of 1%, how many did you get rid of? Not very many. So I really don't think you're going to change the amount of problems you have significantly by reducing the 30 to the 25.
So, Director Lewis, in listening to your comments, I don't know if I heard correctly. Are you now suggesting that you want to send it back?
Yeah, let's just send it back. There may be other things.
Are you making a motion? Are you
yes,
making a motion?
I will make a motion. I will make a motion to send it back for reconsideration.
Director Laws, you're second that now? Okay. Any discussion about the motion on the floor to send it back to committee? This becomes an amended motion to the first motion. So now we're just discussing whether or not to approve amending the original motion. So any discussion about sending it back? Director Cook.
If we're, oops, am I muted? No. If we're sending it back, there's a few items I would like to actually put in to say that we need to look at. One, if the 2008 30% cap was done legally and in the proper process and by the proper mechanism, whether this is a proper mechanism by doing it by resolution when it's not showing up in the CC&Rs. And along with that, somehow look at being able to have family members not have to lease if their sons or daughters, and that may take a CC&R amendment also, because those are, to me, the biggest factors in this process. But all those problems are eliminated if we go back to 2008 and don't have a lease cap, which doesn't seem to be a real problem anyway, when we're only at 26% as is. So that's what the market will bear. Why are we going through all this process? So basically, to me, we just need to alleviate this whole problem. And I want that to be part of what's going back when it goes back to committee to discuss.
All right, Mr. Cook, Director Cook.
Yeah.
We have two choices then at the moment, based on what you're asking. Choice number one is to amend the motion that's currently on the floor to include those elements. Choice number two is to ask the mover and the maker of the amended motion if they will accept your additions to their amended motion.
And I would like to do the second.
All right, so we'll ask Director Lewis and Director Laws if they would be willing to accept the comments by Director Cook to add those items to the motion to amend.
Yes.
Director Laws. Okay. So the amended motion at the moment is to send back to committee with the three conditions that Director Cook has now added to the motion. Okay, looking at the 2008 to see if it's legal, looking at the issue of children leasing to their parents, and Director Cook, what was the third one?
The third one was also in the same as the 2008 to see if this is even the proper mechanism by which to do this.
Okay, so those are the three conditions that are now part of the amended motion. Is there any more discussion on the amended motion? Hearing none, I'll assume then by consent that the amended motion is approved unless I hear otherwise, if anybody dissents. Hearing no dissent, we've now approved the amended motion. So the motion that is now on the floor related to the lease cap is to send it back to committee with the three conditions that Director Cook added to the motion. That's the motion that's now on the floor for us to consider. Is there any discussion now about the motion? I'm sorry, that's Robert's rule. I'm just trying to do it properly. Hearing no discussion, I will then again assume by consent. Director Jarrett, you have a hand up?
Yes, I want to mention something here that I hadn't said before, but because I, approved resale documents, it was about 2.5 years ago, we were up to almost 28.5%. So I just want you to know, it's not always been 26%. So just a trivial thing. But
right, but it's never been 30%, as Pamela Bashline pointed out.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else, comments? Hearing none. The motion on the floor then is to send back to committee the lease cap issue with the 3 conditions that Director Cook added to the motion. Hearing no more discussion, all those in favor of the motion to send it back to committee with those 3 conditions, I'll assume by consent that the motion is approved unless I hear otherwise. I hear no dissent, therefore the motion is to send it back to committee. Thank you. And thank all the members for all of their comments. I'm actually very pleased that I sent out in that email blast, that Wednesday email blast, the heads up about this, because it got a lot of people involved, got a lot of feedback from people. And so in the sense of trying to continue with transparency, I will continue on some of my Wednesday email blasts to highlight things that the board is considering so that people have an opportunity to weigh in. So thank you, everyone, for your contributions. I think it certainly has influenced the board in its thinking, certainly as it relates to this issue. All right, moving on. We now have item 14C, entertain a motion to introduce a lease authorization renewal. All right, this goes on 28 days. At this point, Lynn, do you want to just read the resolution that goes on 28 days?
Yeah, I will read a little bit extra so that people understand what it means.
Right.
The full lease authorization application requires landlords and tenants to complete the lease authorization application, provide a copy of the lease agreement, acknowledge the assignment of rent provision, provide the declaration of criminal record for each lessee, and provide the declaration of understanding signed by each lessor and lessee. The full lease authorization application reacquaints everyone with the complete policy and any amendments thereto. The fee for a new lease authorization application is currently $170. No change to the fee is recommended at this time. Utilizing abbreviated forms will simplify the process for customers and staff alike. It is common for some individuals' contact information to change frequently, and so the annual verification of mailing address, email address, and telephone numbers is quite justifiable and particularly important for off-site owner communication. The resolution reads such as, whereas the Third Laguna Hills Mutual is authorized to manage, operate, and maintain housing at Laguna Woods Village. And whereas Third amended its lease authorization policy by way of Resolution 03-2104 in order to comport with AB 3182, which became effective January 1, 2021. And whereas the Board of Directors is aware of member requests to ease the annual paperwork requirements for landlords and tenants who are in good standing without rule violations, late payments, or delinquency. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors approves an abbreviated lease authorization renewal application process for up to 5 years for landlords and tenants who remain in good standing during the lease authorization period. No change in the fee for lease authorization renewals will result. Resolve further that the officers and agents of the corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution.
Okay, this goes on 28 days.
Yes.
At this point, so it'll be available then for member comments as we move forward. And at the February meeting, it'll come up for actual approval or not, and discussion at that time. So this goes on 28-day notice. Okay? All right, 14D. Director Lewis.
so I was reading that some of the things, information that is on the lease authorization policy, like as an example, number 14C on page 32 of 44, does not have to be filled out by California state law, like Social Security number or source of income. If you have an out of country individual, they will not have a Social Security number, and you do not have to have that filled in, nor is the source of income required by California law as far as I was able to find. The responsibility of finding out if someone's a convicted felon or not would be not Third Mutual's responsibility, but the responsibility, if they so deem, of the individual leasing out the unit.
Can Pamela address that, please?
Pam, are you still online and able to address the questions raised by Director Lewis? Because these are the forms, Director Lewis, that have been used for years. This is not anything new, and these are the forms that were adopted years ago. Pam, you want to address his questions?
Yes, thank you. And yes, we are not required, or a respondent is not required to provide a Social Security number. We know that there are many people who have just arrived in the States and don't have a Social Security number, and they merely tell us that's the case, and that's as far as we go. With respect to income source, again, Third Mutual is not a party to the lease agreement. This was an effort for landlords who, before this application became common, failed to ask customary and standard questions of their tenants. And then when there was a problem, they were contacting the leasing office to please help them get rid of this not so good tenant. We do not take that position, and we don't take that help, but we think if they make reasonable inquiry, they kind of have a red light. Maybe this isn't the best tenant for them. Irrespective of that, many landlords, because maybe they know a person, do not exclude them as a renter. They have their eyes wide open. I know that he's got a credit score of 500. I know that he's a high risk for default. Whatever that issue is, the landlord has the option to rent to that person. Third Mutual is not going to deny that. I do believe there is language in Third's CC&Rs that relate to persons with a felony or a misdemeanor involving moral turpitude. Those questions relate to the CC&R requirements. Did I cover all the questions, or is there one still outstanding?
Director Lewis, she's asking if she's covered all your questions.
I'm just not sure if the lease agreement will be a proper place for all those things you said. If you're trying to help the landlord, then perhaps a separate sheet of guidance, if you will, as Alterations tries to put out, would be a better place, like a checklist. Did you do this with your prospective tenant? Did you ask that for your prospective tenant? That's all. Some people will feel that if they don't fill out a space, especially those, let's say, from another country, that they may be denied. And I know that's not your intent with this, but it may be construed in that manner. But
well, it hasn't really presented a problem so far to date that we're aware of. So, and like I said, it's been used for quite a long time without any reservations or pushback from people on these issues. All right. We have a resolution that is actually designed to ease the continued leasing of units by members who are in good standing, to dramatically reduce their paperwork on a yearly basis, and they can do this for up to 5 years before they would have to go back through the formal renewal process. Also, the renewal process, the fee is $110 for the renewal, not $170. It's $170 for a new lease, $110 for the renewal process. So that's the resolution that goes on 28 days at this point, and we'll have much more discussion about it when it comes up at next month's meeting. All right, moving along. Entertain a motion to introduce a revision to the hot water heater enclosure disposition. This goes also on 28 days. Lynn, would you like to read that, please?
Yes, I'll read the resolution. It spells out everything. It spells everything out. Whereas standard 32 water heater relocations were allowed by the board adoption of the original resolution dated August 1992, and lastly by revised March 2019 resolution 03-1934. And whereas the board agrees that the use of common area for the relocation of manor water heater tanks in their respective enclosures does not enhance the building or mutual aesthetics of the community. And whereas the board agrees to cancel or revoke both the original resolution dated August 1992 and the revised March 2019 resolution 03-1934. And whereas the board agrees to prohibit all new exterior water heater approvals and further prohibits the approval of water heater relocations by variance. And whereas the existing and prior manor alteration approved exterior water heater cabinets would be allowed to remain and continue to exist or grandfather, the existing cabinets and water heater maintenance will continue as an obligation of the member as an alteration limited by the following criteria. In the event the water heater cabinet and its landscaping are not properly maintained, the member may lose all rights to its presence in common area as may be enacted by the board. If the existing cabinet needs to be reconstructed due to rot or removal for mutual maintenance activities, the cabinet shall be built back to the new standard 32, revised containing pressure-treated wood, stucco veneer, new roofing material. This new drawing has not yet been revised, as the approval of a new resolution and design costs would be a prerequisite to the standard revision. All landscaping shall be installed per the original standard 32. The member shall contact landscaping services to arrange for the installation of adequate landscaping material and any alteration of irrigation work. Manor alterations shall prohibit the issuance of all future requests regarding water heater relocations to the common area. Whereas the board agrees that the prohibition of future water heater enclosures will contribute to a more positive architectural image of the community. And now, therefore, be it resolved on this date of January 18th, 2022, the 3rd Laguna Hills Board hereby approves the prohibition of exterior water heater relocations resolution as attached, and resolved further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out the purpose of this resolution.
Okay, this goes on 28 days at this point. So unless we have we'll have a full discussion about this next month, unless there's some comments somebody would like to make now. Director Lewis.
Yes, on page 2 of 24, it says if landscaping is not properly maintained, that would be our responsibility. So you're saying if we don't maintain the landscaping in a proper way, the owner loses his rights? Is that what this says? And that would be on number 3 on page 2 of 24, agenda item 14D.
It is the responsibility of the homeowner to maintain that landscaping, yes.
Yet we're asking the homeowner to have our landscaping put it in?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. It's a good
I just want
question.
that clarified, that's all.
Yeah, I think we can talk about that next month. But yeah, I think that's a good question. And in the meantime, we can get some clarification on that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay?
President
All right,
Munchnick, we
Director
also
Cook.
have Gavin Fogg on staff who you can answer the question.
Oh, Gavin, please do. Thank you.
Good morning. Yes, so just to clarify, essentially, as you stated, the landscape, whilst in general, landscape is the responsibility of the mutual. In cases where it has been affected by an alteration, then it would become the member's responsibility. It would be a chargeable service, essentially. So what would happen is if the landscape area has been affected by that alteration, or if the alteration itself looks as if it's in disrepair, we would issue a correction notice for that to be brought back into compliance with the existing standard. If the member fails to do that within 38 days, then it would go through a compliance process, and then it would ultimately go to a compliance hearing where the board would have a right to be able to revoke the use of common area for that water heater alteration.
Okay. Director Cook, you had a comment?
Yes. As far as once it's put in according to our standards. It's put in by our maintenance people and our landscaping people. Does this say, I mean, it almost appears as though the owner is supposed to get out there by the cabinet and trim the bushes. Wouldn't our landscaping just trim the bushes as they trim all the bushes that are up against the buildings? And so to me, what this means, but maybe isn't obvious, is that the landscaping properly maintained. In other words, the owner cannot come out there and remove that landscaping once it's put in place, but the sprinklers and the trimming, to me, is part of maintenance once that's established. And if anything goes wrong with that planting, then the owner would be responsible to have it replanted. But I don't think it is the owner's responsibility to go out there and trim the bushes. Just my 2 cents.
Gavin, go ahead.
Correct, yeah. So, obviously there's hundreds of potential scenarios with a water heater being there. So what this is basically saying is that once it's established, what is the responsibility of the mutual and what's the responsibility of the member on a case-by-case scenario? If the landscape is maintained by the member or is required to be a chargeable service to the member, at that point is when the mutual has the ability to request a correction notice and then go through that compliance process. So that would be part of a case-by-case evaluation to determine with landscape what they do maintain and what they do not maintain in relation to that particular water heater installation.
Director Laws.
So given that option that Gavin has just mentioned, perhaps number 3 should be reworded a little bit to say the member may lose all rights to its presence in common area versus shall. To me, shall is a little more, if something's done wrong, we're going to take it away regardless, where it sounds like there's a process and that it would be worked through.
I think that's a very good point, Director Laws, and I would have no problem changing that to a may instead of shall. I don't know how the rest of anybody feels, whether there's any objection to that, but I would have no problem with that. Director Lewis.
That's fine with me, but I still think, as Mr. Fogg had just brought up, that if it's on a case-by-case basis, that should be stated clearly when these cabinets are made, done, installed, remodeled, refurbished, who's taking care of what, whether it's a chargeable service. This needs to be well defined so there's no ambiguity, so the owner doesn't come back and saying, I thought you were supposed to do it, and we're saying, no, you're supposed to do it. It should be very clearly defined within the permitting process, who's taking care of what and who's paying for what. That's all.
Okay, Director Laws, you have a hand up again?
Yes, since we're talking about potentially changing some words on this, in the financial analysis, it mentions that a construction estimate comparison is shown in attachment 3. I believe that construction estimate comparison is actually in attachment 4. So, Mr. Fogg, you may want to take a look at that.
Right, I'll get that updated.
It is attachment 4, yeah. That's correct. Good point. All right. Director Cook, go ahead.
Maybe sentence 3 should actually be 2 sentences, and one should say, in the event the water heater cabinet is not properly maintained, the member may lose all rights to the presence in common area. And then the second sentence in that would be the landscaping maintenance to be determined as to whether it's our landscape department's responsibility or the member's responsibility.
And that will be done through the compliance hearing.
Right. But to me, mixing the cabinet with the landscape makes it unclear.
Okay, so what you're suggesting is that we change the word from member shall to member may, and then a second sentence be that determination of responsibility for landscaping of the area would be addressed through a compliance issue.
Correct.
How does everybody else feel about that? Director Engdahl?
I agree.
Okay. Everybody else okay with that as change? All right, then we'll add those words that change the shall to may and add the extra sentence. And then we'll put it on 28-day notice. Okay? All right. Committee reports.
President Mushnick.
We are now down to the Finance Committee.
Before we
Director,
move on, Connie does have some email comments.
Oh, related to this specific issue?
Related to, yes, the water heater.
Okay, then please read those comments.
J. Lacey, 3024D. He also submitted 5 photos to the Board of Directors prior to this. My name is J. Lacey. I represent a group in the village called Concern, whose mission is to protect our architecture and landscape. Concern stands for Community of Neighbors Curing Eyesores and Restoring Neighborhoods. I'm also an HOA manager. One eyesore in our neighborhood is the water heater hats. I submitted photos of 5 of this hatch, which I hope to receive. Please prohibit any further constructions of these hats in our common area. They are ugly. One director said they look like outhouses. There are other locations for water heaters, such as on-wall in patios where they cannot be seen from outside and do not impact curb appeal. There's also a space in bathrooms, kitchens, closets, attics, and other locations. Most importantly, these hats are in common area, which is illegal. Common area is not for the exclusive use by any of one member. Common area belongs to all of us. That is the fundamental principle of an HOA. To be clear, California Civil Code 4600A states, and I quote, the affirmative votes of members owning at least 67% of the separate interest in the common interest development shall be required before the board may grant exclusive use of any portion of the common area to the member. If anyone in Laguna Woods Village disagrees with this law, then their argument is with the California legislature, and they should go to Sacramento and lobby to change the law or move to a single-family home outside of the HOA where they can build whatever they want in their own yards. HOA boards have a duty to uphold laws and not give in to pressures within the HOA to deviate from those laws. A permissive attitude here over the decades in which rule of laws is ignored and boards give in to pressures from certain selfish members to expand their units into our common area has spoiled the community. Don't be afraid to enforce the law. Don't be afraid to enforce Davis Sterling. You don't need an expensive legal opinion to figure this out. It's in there, Davis Sterling, in black and white. We urge the board to stop any new water heater hats in our common area and to comply with Davis Sterling in all decisions. I invite anyone listening to contact me for photos of these hats or to discuss the issue. My email is jaylad9@comline.com. That's spelled JAYLAD9@comline.com. Thank you.
Is that the only comment, or is there another one, Connie?
That's all.
Okay. All righty. Moving on now to committee reports. We have the report of the Finance Committee. Director Rain-Sosak, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I did want to begin. Grant, do you have the slides relating to the external factors affecting Third Mutual costs?
Yes, I have both slideshows. Did you want me to show the external factors first?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I would, because it has obviously the increase in the monthly assessment fees has been upsetting. It was difficult to make that decision to do it, but there were external factors that affected it. And we'd like to share that now because I'm also going to share some things that members can do to help offset when we can. So if you will bring those slides up, Grant.
One moment.
Give everyone a chance to stretch a little bit. Thank you very much. Okay, and if you could move on to the first actual slide rather than just the title, and we'll be moving pretty quickly through this, Grant. So one of the first things that's affecting it is the United States annual inflation rate. We are in a period of inflation that hasn't been seen in 40 years. In November, the annual inflation rate was 6.8%, and the December figures were just released, and that reached 7%. So everywhere, costs are going up, and they are something we cannot control here in the mutual, and I think you've all seen it at the gas pump, at the grocery store, et cetera. As we move on to the very next slide, we have something that was kind of a surprise, and there's nothing we can do about this one either, which is the city of Laguna Woods, as opposed to the village, is controlling the contract and the costs with CR&R in terms of the new organic recycling regulations. And the city anticipates that Third Mutual in 2022 might have a 36% increase in their trash bill. 2023, it gets a little worse at 47%. And as you can see on the chart, ultimately starts going down a bit in terms of increases. But again, this is something that is beyond our control. The state has mandated the new organic recycling, and the city controls the charges and the contract with the waste management company. As we move on to the very next slide, this is one that has been really quite interesting. There have been many opinions expressed from members that insurance rates should be going down, not up. But as you can see, the reality is quite different. In 2017, the insurance industry was hit with Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, Maria, you may all remember that, and some California wildfires that continued with more hurricanes of Florence and Michael, and California wildfires again in 2018. 2019, they paused, caught their breath, the insurance industry did, and said, you know, we might have to do something, and start increasing rates significantly because they are for profit and not charitable. And in 2020, the insurance industry was inundated with pandemic claims, and the carriers said, we've got to do something. So most of you who have homeowners insurance, or rather condo insurance, probably noticed an increase in your rates. They've gone up. So just in general, those rates have gone up. And there was nothing that anyone could do about that. But if we move on to the next slide, which affects us very directly, Third Mutual, at the same time as these problems hit, Third Mutual had a reevaluation of its property value. And prior to the revaluation, as I suspect everyone knows, we were valued at $700 million. After the revaluation, $1.6 billion. So not only was there this requirement that exists in our CC&Rs that we try to cover 100% of the property value, and not only did the insurance rates go up across the board, but in addition, our own evaluation went up. As we move on to the very next slide, thank you, we have utility costs. Water costs were increased by El Toro Water District July 1st of this year. And we, of course, have ongoing water crises. I won't spend much time on it. But this is just a chart comparing our water costs, not our usage, because remember, if the costs went up, we might have the same usage and it would cost more money. But as you can see, comparing 2020 to 2021, we did not have the November figures soon enough to put it in. It looks like there was a greater increase in September and October because of the height of the bars, but actually those don't cover a very large amount. We're talking in September of a difference of $13,000, which is still a lot, and in October a difference of $11,000-ish. And so the cost went up, the usage also went up a little, but not quite as much. And some of that from June all the way through September was related to the decreased water that we had. We hadn't had rain. We had the terrible drought. In October and November, fortunately, our landscaping water went down, and I think we'll see it reflected. But again, utility costs are something we don't really have control over, except in terms of our own residential water, and we'll talk about that in a second. If we can move on to the very next slide. So what we can't control: inflation, regulations such as the trash, insurance industry rates increases, and property and valuations by insurance. So those are the things that we can't control, that we kind of just have to deal with. But if we move on, because the most important question, and this is the one we as the Finance Committee wanted you to be aware of, is moving on to the next slide. What can we do, Grant, to help control the costs? And this is where we all come in. So moving quickly, because time is important, let's move on to that slide of what can we do. And the first thing we can do is be involved. Attend committee and association meetings. And we have special thanks to our new committee advisors. A call went out and we had a wonderful response, and we thank you. Be informed, attending board meetings, town hall sessions, reading the briefs, keeping up with what's in the village. And I have to say that this morning's meeting, with all of the participation from members, demonstrates what can happen when members become involved. They're informed, they become knowledgeable, and can very well influence actions of the boards because we exist to meet the needs of the community. And the last of those would be energy conscious. And just very quickly to finish up this part of it, conserve water. That's the next slide, and the last one. Conserve water, yeah. Fixing leaks. And just please, even a faucet dripping at 1 drip per second can waste up to 5 gallons of water a day or 150 gallons a month, and that's about 1,800 gallons a year. So please get those leaks fixed. Toilets leaking, do the same. Be very conscious of your water use, shorter showers, shut off water while brushing your teeth, blah, blah, blah. And that concludes what we can do. The other thing we can do, and that is the final one, is if we move on to the next slide, Grant. The other thing we can do when we can't have and don't have cost savings initiatives, which we've been highlighting. Grant, please move on.
This is the last slide that I have.
They left the 2 off? Okay, I will just tell you then and do it verbally. When we don't have cost savings initiatives that we can do, and we have been highlighting them and they've helped, and when we can't do other things, then what we can do, and the only thing left, is budget cuts. And budget cuts means things don't get done that might have gotten done. And the slides that somehow were not in the pack showed some of the budget cuts that were made this year by the board, and those things will eventually get done, but it's a savings that isn't ultimately really a savings, it's merely postponed. So we just wanted you to be aware of that. And with that, Grant, if we can move to the treasurer's report.
One moment.
And the full financial report, which we will do very quickly in interest of time. Do you have that slide deck?
I do. One moment.
Okay. All right, here we go. And these are the numbers. The first one we always show you is just the overall income statement with assessment and non-assessment revenue. And this is always shown on our slides in the thousands. So that's 31,716,000 was our revenue from assessments. Non-assessment, 1,488,000. For total revenue up to and through as of November 30th, total revenue of 33,204,000. Against expenses of 32,522,000. And so we do have a net revenue surplus of $682,000. If we move on to the very next slide, we're going to look at the operating budget. And you saw the overall just now. Now we're going to look by budget. The operating budget is the one we plan for, the one we anticipate expenses. It's very difficult to hit it exactly on the penny, but we certainly make that attempt. And the assessment revenue, as we expected, was the $19,220,000. The non-assessment revenue, the $1,395,000. Both of those were that part of the revenue that was just previously reported that went into our operating fund. So a total revenue into the operating fund of $20,615,000. Our total expenses exceeded that slightly, and so we had a deficit in terms of the budget that was planned of $582,000. Let's move on to the next slide. And this one looks at our income statement in comparison to our budget. Again, we're back to the overall income statement. You can see the assessment revenue was exactly as budgeted, $31,716,000. The non-assessment revenue was slightly lower than anticipated. And some of that had to do with other kinds of fees coming in that we anticipated and didn't get, et cetera, for a deficit of $501,000. Total revenue, you can see, when we add the two together, $33,204,000. And our total expenses, $32,522,000. If we put everything together, we were looking against budget, and that's what's really important. So the actual, we did $682,000 better. The budgeted, we anticipated a little more than that. And so we have a variance of $2,431,000, which in fact is in our favor. So that was very good. The question is, why did we have that variance? And some of it had to do with open positions, which will be filled, and those expenses will then again appear. If we move on to the next one, I think, and I rushed through this one because I want you to see this next one. It really explains things a little better. This tells where we did well, where we didn't, and better than anticipated, where we didn't. That center line going straight up and down represents what we had anticipated in the budget. Outside services, we obviously, anything moving to the right, we did better than budgeted. But most of the reason for that was because of unfilled positions and some outsourcing we were able to do. Employee compensation, again, we did much better than anticipated by budget, but some of that had to do with unfilled positions. Legal fees is a real plus. It was $237,000 better than budgeted, and that was through efforts of trying to only contact legal services when it was absolutely necessary and really refining things. And professional fees, again, a little less, $90,000 less than anticipated because some of the consultants were unable to fulfill their contracts due to COVID and various things. Where we didn't do as well, utilities, and I've already mentioned the water, the fact that the water bill went up and we had a terrible drought, and both of those things are what put us at $99,000 to the deficits in terms of what we had anticipated. Going down, investment income, I'm going to move down to that one. Investment income looks like a loss of $282,000. That's one because we carry over what was an anticipated paper gain. So there really, in fact, was not a loss. And as we have repeatedly said, the investment money of our replacement fees has been put into accounts that are federally insured, that are managed well, and we don't have any fees anymore for them. And so that we will not have losses again once that the year was completed. And this obviously was getting close to the end of it. And of course, insurance, for many of the reasons that I mentioned already, is what really hit us hard. And that was $2,260,000 that had not been anticipated. It was covered by taking the money out of disaster fund and replacement fund. And so if we move on to the very next slide, the reason I like this one is it's always so much easier sometimes to see a picture of relationships. And these is where, where does our non-assessment money come from? Well, the largest part of it, almost 50%, 44% of our non-assessment revenue comes from fees and charges to residents. And that includes such things as permits, inspections, and chargeable services. The lease processing fee accounts for about 15% of that. The laundry and the income from the machines, which is good because we have to replace those machines and maintain them, about 13%. The resale processing fee, about 12%. And a much smaller means, but certainly part of our non-assessment income is investment, the golf cart electric fee, late fee revenues, and then miscellaneous. As we move on to our total expenses, let's see where they come from in the same kind of a report. And we see that employee compensation in the orange section, employee compensation and related expenses to that is about 38% of our total expenses. Outside services, 19%. Insurance, a good chunk of 18%. Utilities, telephone, so we're looking at water, phone, et cetera, 16%. And then to a much smaller extent, our expenses in materials and supplies, net allocations to the mutuals, repairs, maintenance, and that category of others. So that kind of covers the broad picture. Let's move on, and as we finish up, let's move on to the very next slide. This is where we just look at some of the other funds. We first looked very early on at the operation fund. That's the one that we plan for, we anticipate. Replacement funds, obviously we must have those. Disaster fund is a fund, obviously, in anticipation of problems. Unappreciated expenditures fund, that's an interesting way of saying contingency fund, those things we didn't expect, and the Garden Villa fund. So looking at these small funds, you can see that the beginning balances, if we start with the beginning balance of $17,437,000 in the replacement fund, dropping down to the bottom, the current balance of $19,827,000, we have improved that considerably. The disaster fund, if you look from the top number of $6,843,000 and down to $6,161,000 at the bottom, the disaster fund dropped slightly, and that was primarily funds that were taken out.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. You have not entered any numbers. Enter your participant ID followed by You have entered the meeting as a panelist. Attendees can now hear you speak.
Yes, I'll just let you know it's a bar graph of what you've already seen. Are we having a technical problem?
So we just disconnected
The
from
bar graph,
audio.
you can just skip very quickly
Oh, wait.
to the last slide, because the bar graph just shows.
Director Rain Shostak, we just disconnected from audio, but we are now back. So we did miss most of the information on this slide. I do apologize.
Okay, well, I think the residents, if we missed it, the residents can see it, and they can see that the replacement fund improved. Top line is the beginning, bottom line is the current. The disaster fund went down for insurance purposes. The unappropriated expenditures or contingency dropped only slightly, and that's typically expected because this is just the best estimate of what the expenses would be in those areas, and the Garden Villa fund going up. So if you will move on, if we're still connected, hopefully. If you can move on. This is just the same thing in graph form, and the only purpose for this is you can kind of look at the bars. Orange is replacement, yellow is disaster, blue is unappropriated expenditures or contingency. And Garden Villa is a tiny little grayish beige line at the very top that is very small that you can't see. And basically all this does is kind of show you how the ratio of those funds goes up and down, which we've already mentioned. So we can move to the last slide, which I really like to see, because the last slide shows us our resale history, and this was a very good year. In 2019, we had 368 resales. 2020, when the pandemic hit, those resales dropped to 293. And so far, year to date, we've had 451 resales. The average price, if we go back to 2019, if the average price was little over $413,000, and in 2021, the average resale price was $50,000 more at $463,873. So with that concludes the report of the Finance Committee.
Thank you very much, Director Rain-Sosak, for both very informative presentations on what's driving our costs and also where we are financially. So thank you.
Yeah,
Next
and
report.
if I may, because of the slides moving a little slow, I just wanted to say that when we talked about what we can do to control costs, I failed to mention the most important thing of when members are involved, and today was a perfect example of what happens when members are involved and are active. And as we had the discussion of the lease issue. So I thank the members for their participation, and that's a perfect example of what we were saying.
Thank you. Next report is the Architectural Controls and Standard Committee. We met on December 27th. You saw the outcome by today, the motion related to the hot water heater enclosure and the use of hot water heater enclosures in common area. That was a result of the Architectural Standards and Control Committee work. The next meeting of the committee is January 24th at 9:30 in the morning. It will be a virtual meeting, and we invite all members to Zoom in with us. Thank you. Next report is the Communications Committee, Director McCary. You're muted, Director McCary.
Sorry about that. Thank you. The third Communications Committee did meet on January 17th. It's a very informal meeting. Some of our discussion involved around the actual means that we have of communicating with our residents. And we just basically reviewed some of the avenues that we use for communication, which included our town hall meetings, this day on TV6, the Village Breeze, the Friday Eve Blast, and of course our board meetings and what's up in the village. So we basically looked at those modalities for communicating with our residents, and we also looked at and discussed some of the virtual forums that we use for communication and some of the potential pitfalls of these virtual avenues. Mainly, we talked about Granicus a little bit and some of the problems that are associated with Granicus and some things that could probably be improved to make the communication a lot more effective. We talked about the Zoom meetings and how some of as we move into having more Zoom meetings, Are there any issues that we can look at that could make the Zoom experience or our communication a lot more effective? And so we made a list of those things that we thought could be helpful. And we also talked about the fact that so many residents don't participate in a lot of the meetings and stuff. And then they also say that the communication is bad. So we actually just looked at the communication. We looked at some potential technology issues. And one of the things that I really wanted our residents to know is there is a new TV6 program, and it's called Let's Talk Tech. And this is a program that is put on by a former third board member and now a GRF member, Debbie Dotson, and it's designed to help residents that are not as comfortable using electronics and technology. And this program is on TV6. And it's every Tuesday at 2 p.m. and every Friday at 10:30 a.m. And she basically does a lot of highlights. You can find out how to navigate smartphones and iPhones, your iPads and your desktop computers, some helpful hints about all the challenges about emails. And it's just a really overall good program for residents who are a little bit intimidated by electronics. So that program is available. And so those are just some of the things that we discussed at our communications committee. Again, it's an informal committee. We discussed some of the ideas that we might be able to come up with later to enhance the communication experience. And in addition, members of the Third Communication Committee also sit on the GRF Media and Communications Committee, so that if there are any concerns in terms of communication, we can take those back to the GRF Media and Communications Committee, and vice versa. If there's something that the GRF Media and Communications Committee feels needs to be punted off to the Third Communications Committee, we can also work together on that. So again, it was an informal meeting. Our next meeting, because the meeting is a quarterly meeting, our next meeting is scheduled for April 13th, and it will be a virtual meeting as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the report of the Maintenance and Construction Committee. Director Engdahl, you would unmute yourself, please.
Thank you, Director Muchnick. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The latest meeting of Third Mutual M&C Committee was held on January 3rd. Several key staff members were unable to attend due to the COVID-19 uptick recently. Consequently, some of our status reports on scheduled items were being pushed to the future agenda category. Nevertheless, we do have a couple of items. Mr. Gomez indicated he had contacted two vendors regarding more frequent inspection of our manners for termites and dry rot. This is something that was suggested because of changing to a 15-year paint and prior to paint schedule, which used to also include the inspection for termites and dry rot. Anyway, neither of the two vendors he contacted were interested in providing free annual inspection, but would charge on the order of $300,000 per year. Discussion with other vendors is continuing. A couple of members expressed concern regarding size and security of mailboxes. Mr. Gomez offered to investigate their particular situation and respond eventually as needed. Staff was also requested to investigate the efficacy of our solar panel program and consider expansion of the program would be beneficial to us as a community. A lot of the other items were scheduled for discussion, which this had to be slipped to the next meeting. So that's the next scheduled meeting of Third M&C Committee is March 7th. Thank you.
And thank you. Next up is the report of the Parking and Golf Cart Subcommittee. Director Bada.
Coming up in a moment, sir. The Parking and Golf Cart Committee is meeting actually tomorrow. We haven't had a meeting in a long time. It was during the previous boards, and I was not on the committee at that time. so we will not have much to report today. The next meeting is not, besides the one tomorrow, the following meeting will be decided when we're going to have it tomorrow. Means the one after tomorrow.
Thank you,
I
sir.
have nothing to report today.
All right, sir, thank you. So I guess we'll hear from you next month after tomorrow's meeting.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, sir. All right, next up is the Garden Villa Rec Room Subcommittee, Director Jarrett.
Yes, the subcommittee last met on September the 29th, and the next meeting will be February the 23rd at 1:30 p.m. as a virtual meeting.
Okay, thank you. Report of the Landscape Committee, Director Jarrett. Yours again, please.
Okay, at this meeting, we had more tree removal and trimming requests than we've had for a long, long time, as witnessed by the consent calendar today. We discussed the concept once again of going to drought-tolerant plants in the future. The VMS Landscape Director, Freeman, reported that there were 38 trees lost in the village the day of the big storm recently. He also made some staff changes in management and stated that we should see a more positive change. The contracted workers are in place to fill the crews and are working well. The next meeting is February the 3rd at 9:30 a.m. It'll be a virtual meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, report of the Water Committee, Director Rain Sosak.
Yes, the Water Committee only meets quarterly, so we didn't have a formal meeting in December. However, December, several members of the committee participated in El Toro Water District's Community Advisory Group, and at that meeting, we were able to get the consent of El Toro Water to provide rebates to those members of Gate 14 and Gate 11 who might want to switch to drought-tolerant plants. Up until now, because Third has recycled water, we were couldn't get any rebates. And when we pointed out that Gate 11 and 14 are geographically separated from the rest of the village and cannot have recycled water, they agreed that that didn't seem fair. So we accomplished quite a bit by attending that meeting. We've also filmed a very short program that I was asked to participate in. It'll show every Wednesday and Sunday at 9:30 in the morning on TV6, only 15 minutes long, on water conservation. And the general manager of El Toro Water District, that was mentioned earlier in the meeting, has accepted an invitation to attend. At the moment, we're hoping that March will be an in-person meeting and he will be on that agenda, but he will be coming to speak to us at our first in-person meeting. And our next meeting was scheduled for the end of January as our quarterly meeting, but that has been canceled because of a conflict in meeting time with others now that we are on virtual. And so that will be rescheduled sometime in February and will be announced. And that concludes the report.
Thank you very much. And last but not least is the report of the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee. And we obviously addressed today a couple of issues that the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee dealt with at the last meeting. One was the 25% lease cap, which obviously is going back to the committee with the additional conditions that Director Cook added. And the other one was the lease authorization renewal, which is still on 28 days with some minor modifications. So those are the things that the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee dealt with at its last meeting, which was on December 28th. The next meeting is January 26th at 9:30, and as all meetings, this one will be virtual as well. We now move to GRF Committee highlights. We have the Community Activities Committee, Director McCary. Would you like to speak to that, please?
Yes, thank you, President Muchnick. The Community Activities Committee did meet on January 13th. It was a virtual meeting, and so I will just highlight some of the items of discussion. There was some discussion about the garden center operating rules were discussed, and it seems that there are some plot owners that don't follow the rules. So for those owners, they will be getting a letter from compliance reminding them that they do have to follow the rules. In addition, Brian Gruner also reported that there is actually a waiting list for plots. in the garden center, and the list can be as long as 3 to 4 months, depending on the season of the year. Another item of discussion had to do with the online reservation system, which is more familiar known as the court system. And some of the clubs that typically use it, or the highest users, are the pickleball players, the lap swimmers, and the tennis. And there seems to be kind of a mixed review on the relevance of the court system. Some of the clubs think it's a really good idea, and some of them think that it's cumbersome and not worth it. So a survey was sent out, and the comments were pretty much in favor. There were 450 participants in the survey, and it was reported that 1/3 were in favor of the online system, and 2/3 were not in favor of it. So the committee made a recommendation to remove pickleball from the online reservation system, the court system, and keep the lap swimming and the tennis on the system, and then they will reevaluate this over the next 3 months. The committee also approved a request for the Recreation Department to purchase a aerator. And so that request will now go to purchasing. And the last thing, Juanita Skillman announced that the library, during this COVID shutdown, that the village library remains open and that masks are required. And that is the next CAC meeting is scheduled for February 10th, and it will be a virtual meeting, and that's my report.
Okay, thank you, Director McCary. Next, we go to the Equestrian Center Ad Hoc Committee and Director Bada.
The Equestrian Center Committee met on November the 4th, and the next meeting is on January 26th. So we haven't had another meeting in between, so I have nothing new to report.
All righty, thank you, sir. Next up is the GRF Finance Committee, Director Rain Sotzak.
GRF Finance Committee met December 15th, and that meeting was reported at our third mutual board meeting on the 21st of December. They do not meet in January. Their next meeting will be February my calendars are switched, February the 16th, and will be reported on at our next board meeting when we can.
All righty, thank you. GRF Landscape Committee, Director Lewis.
There's nothing that has been changed. The GRF Landscape Committee last met on December 8th. Was reported on at the last board meeting here. The biggest highlight was the acceptance of the bid for our new master controller irrigation system. And the next meeting will be February 9th at 1:30 as a virtual meeting.
Thank you, sir. GRF Maintenance Construction Committee, Director Engdahl.
Thank you, Director. Last meeting of the GRF M&C Committee was held on December 8th, and that's been mostly covered in our last monthly report. I have nothing new to report this month other than the Clubhouse Renovation Ad Hoc Committee, which is coming up next. Thank you.
Okay, sir, thank you. And now the Clubhouse Facilities Renovation Ad Hoc Committee. Do you have something to say there?
Yes, the last meeting of the Clubhouse Renovation Ad Hoc Committee was last December 29th. The PAC work is continuing. That's at Clubhouse 3, and it should be close to finished, rendering the facility available for use. I am aware of an event presently scheduled for February 5th, so we'll see how that goes. Most recent committee activity has been directed more towards Clubhouse 1 renovation. Most discussion on the 29th concerned the main lounge, the present archery or shuffleboard building, whatever you want to call it, and noise mitigation in the dining room. A PowerPoint presentation was made by Chairman Garthoffner regarding the earthquake risk. I'm not all convinced this matter has been finally put to rest, as there is considerable argument in support of further seismic study, especially in view of a couple of geologically recent nearby blind fault events, it has been recommended to hire an independent seismic expert to further analyze the risk to the community. The next meeting of the Clubhouse Renovation Ad Hoc Committee is scheduled for January 28th. That's a week from this Friday coming at about 1:30 p.m. as a virtual meeting.
Thank you, sir. We're now back to the Media and Communications Committee. Director McCary.
Annie, you're muted.
Okay, it's muted again. Okay, sorry about that. The Media and Communications Committee met on 2/17. It was a virtual meeting, and so basically I'll go over just some of the highlights. Eileen Pullen did report that the All Boards training that was conducted some months back is now available on the website, so anyone that's interested in viewing that can just go to the website, and it's under documents and board training. So that's available for anyone that wants to see it. She also spoke a little bit about internet subscriptions. She says that there's over 19,000 subscribers within the village. But she also said that less than 2,000 residents are not subscribed to any kind of internet. So there was some discussion about how to get information to those residents or how they're able to access information. She also reported that the internet revenue, while it wasn't very favorable this last year, the revenue is expected to increase this year because it is an election year and lots of ads will be purchased, and so that will increase the internet revenue. In terms of the community survey and funding for the website, Wei-Ming covered those in her GRF report, so I won't repeat those. She gave a report on the cable operations system and on the broadband group. They have been meeting, and so there is meetings going on with the broadband group, and so soon there will be a report given from that group, and that report will be reported to the committee. Other than that, that was the end of the report. The next meeting is scheduled for February 21st at 1:30, and it will be a virtual meeting as well.
And thank you, Director McCary. Stay up because you're coming up right after Director Bada. Director Bada, Mobility and Vehicles Committee.
Thank you. The Mobility and Vehicles Committee meets every 2 months. The last meeting was in December, on December 1st. We have no new information to share today. Our next meeting is on February 2nd, 2022. At 1:30, it's most likely a virtual meeting.
Thank you very much. And next up, Security and Community Access Committee, Director McCary again.
Thank you, President Munchnick. The Security and Community Access Committee last met in October. A report was given at our last board meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for February 28th at 1:30 p.m., and it will be a virtual meeting.
Thank you. And now we'll move to Disaster Preparedness Task Force, Director Rain Sotzak.
Disaster preparedness will be meeting very soon. And at the last meeting, they talked about the Great Shakeout, and we will be looking at future plans at the next meeting.
The next meeting is scheduled for January 25th at 9:30 as a virtual meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, report of the Laguna Woods Village traffic hearings, Director Franco.
The meeting was held, the last meeting was held on December 15th. There were 5 violations, 4 of which were rescheduled. There was 1 stop sign violation, and the violator was found guilty. The next meeting is tomorrow, January 19th at 9 in the morning.
Okay, thank you, Director Franco. I'd just like to point out to all the members of the community who may still be watching, when the traffic hearing report is given, the report that's given is the number of people who have challenged their tickets and come before the traffic hearing board. There are many people who receive moving violations of one form or another who just pay their fines so they don't appear before the board. So the numbers that you hear are just those that are contesting their tickets. Okay, moving along, GRF Strategic Planning Ad Hoc Committee, Director Lewis.
Yes, this was more of an organizational meeting. It was to finalize the text of a resolution and update it to reflect current mission goals, basically where GRF and Laguna Woods Village has been, where we are, and where we'd like to go. And that's basically what we'll be doing from this point forward. And next meeting is March 9th at 1:30 as a virtual meeting.
Thank you very much. And Jay says task force with Director Wayne, but we're going to remove that since we no longer really have a task force. We no longer have issues related to that. The CR&R has been program has been implemented, and any issues and concerns related to them needs to be addressed directly to CR&R, either their telephone number, which you've been given previously, or their website. So thank you. And thank you, Director Wayne, for your previous work on that task force. Next, we have up the Revenue Resource Ad Hoc Committee. I don't have a name of a person who's giving that report. Is there somebody here who's supposed to give that report?
Director Bada and I are both assigned to this committee. Are you prepared to give a report, Director Bada? I was there for part of the meeting.
Sure, I can do some.
Okay. Then Director Bada, please.
Yeah, this was the first meeting. It was held on January the 12th. It was a virtual meeting, and there was a lot of enthusiasm about it and to create some revenue for our village. An idea that has been going around for a long time was discussed at length and set up a coffee shop / bistro or snack bar. And there was a lot of talk about it. The site visit was scheduled for yesterday. We did go and see it. It was the old pro shop, which is in the Clubhouse 7 building, facing the driving range. And we were able to see inside and around it and the neighboring rooms, and there's a lot of discussion about it. So the staff has been assigned to do some more, to get us some more information, and that way we will be able to make some proper decisions. I'm not sure. For the next meeting is
TBA.
So I'm sorry, I don't have a date for that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Director Bada.
Thank you.
All right. We now move down to future agenda items. Anybody have any suggestions for future agenda items for the board? Director Cook.
I have one, and I've brought it up at several different locations, M&C, alterations. I would really like to see it put on our agenda to install pressure regulating valves and gauges at all main shutoffs at all buildings.
Pressure regulating valves and shutoffs?
No, pressure regulating valves at the shutoff locations.
Oh, at the shutoff location.
And pressure gauges installed so that you can see if the pressure is fluctuating or getting too high, basically to see if the pressure regulating valve has failed, because eventually they do fail.
It would seem to me, Director Cook, that would be a real M&C issue. You said you're taking it to M&C. What's happened there?
Yeah, I put it on M&C, and it just seems to keep slipping off of the agenda.
Okay.
And I think if we have it recognized at our level and put it down to M&C, and it could even be a water issue because with the higher pressures, every time you turn on a faucet, it's putting out more water than it needs to if the pressure's at 90 to 120 psi.
Right.
Rather than at the other. And I have some emails from some residents where they came out for leaks, and because they changed the pressure regulating valve, maybe I can work with Donna and see if that building's water use after the pressure regulating valve was put in, if the use has diminished because of the valve being installed.
Okay, well, why don't you
So
work...
anyway, I just wanted to put it up at a high,
Right.
push it back down so that we get it back and have
Gotcha.
something done about it. When
Okay.
these only cost, with our plumbers and the cost of the materials, to me, it could be a cost savings because any leak could cost us $2,000 or more, and the installation of these should only cost about $200 per building.
Okay, let me suggest this. Why don't you go ahead and work with Donna on this issue related to that specific building? And Ralph, you're chair of the M&C committee. Can you put this on the agenda, not on future agenda items, but on the next agenda so that it can be actually discussed?
I will move it up from future to current next time.
Okay? Try to get some traction there. All right,
Sounds
anybody else? Go ahead, Ralph. You want to...
No, that was it.
Director Lewis.
So, listening to today, there's problems with people trying to refurbish their units in between leasing. We've always had some long-term problems with people refurbishing their units because of the time it takes through alterations for a lot of different things. And we have many different standards set for a particular type of alterations. And I would like to see perhaps a resolution, something very, very simple, to the point where if the application for a permit consists of an already approved standard, and that application contains all the required information, that application should be approved without any additional review. We have those standards for a reason, and everything should just move through faster on those items. Right now, alterations has almost 800 permits sitting and waiting to be approved, and I'm going to say half of those are Third Mutual and the other half United, let's say, but I think more in Third than in United. And if we can get even a percentage of those through with, I hate to use the word rubber stamp, but with a rubber stamp because of we already have policies and standards in place for those items, we should do it. It's better for the village as a whole getting things done. It's better for the ownership, and it'll just help all the way around. It'll help the backlog of those 800 permits in the queue.
Okay, Director Lewis, to address your issue, that is something specific that the Architectural Committee is currently examining. I think one of the things we've discussed at the Architectural Committee, and Director Cook, please jump in if you would, we've discussed specifically what should be, needing a variance, what should be just be standard, what should, that kind of thing. So that's really under discussion right now and has been an ongoing discussion. And I think we're trying to move in the direction that you're suggesting. Director Cook, you want to add to that?
Yes, that's the goal and motivation. And what we're trying to do is even take things that are on the variance process that they are a standard variance so that it can be approved by staff without having to go through a committee and the board, because it should be done that way to be more efficient.
So that's being addressed as we speak during that on that committee. Yeah. All right. Anybody else for additions to the future agenda items for the board? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go now to director comments. I'll start with you, Director Lewis. You're in my top left-hand corner, so please go first.
I have no additional comments today. I've spoken enough.
Director Rain Sosak.
My only comment is to thank Jeff Parker for his 3 years of service and to wish him well. And certainly I know the board agrees with that. So we'll miss you, Jeff, and thank you, and congratulations, Siobhan. We look forward to working with you.
Director Frankel, you're next.
I have no comment, thank you.
Director Laws.
No further comment, thank you.
Director McCary.
Thank you. I echo Director Rain Sosak's comments and thanking Jeff Parker for his leadership, and we wish him well. Thank you.
Director Jarrett.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I met Jeff the first day he was on board. All the boards met in the boardroom, and we were introduced one by one to Jeff. So that was a memorable day because everybody was glad to get him on board. And he's done a wonderful job, and I wish him well in the future.
Thank you. Director Cook. You look frozen to me, Director Cook. Now, Director Cook, final comment? He looks frozen. All right, we'll come back to you, Director Cook. Director Bada.
Oh, I'm here. It was still static from Lynn's talking. I have no further comment.
Okay. Director Bada.
Thank you, President Muchnick. I just want to mention the same thing. Thank you to Jeff. Welcome to Siobhan. And the next thing I want to tell you guys is I will be gone for the next 2 months, and I will see you when I return. But in between, I will have some meetings that I will prepare reports for and pass it down to most likely it will be Director McCary.
Okay, thank you, Director Bada.
Sure, thank you.
Have a safe and healthy travels.
Thank you.
All right, Director Engdahl.
I'm particularly glad to see so many people contributing, so many of the members on board this time, even if they are on the opposite side than me as far as reducing the number. Nevertheless, I have to admit I'm in the minority on that one. I got overruled. At least it looks that way. Also want to wish Jeff the best wherever he goes from here. Thank you for your time with us and for all you've done. Thank you.
Okay, Craig Wayne. Any final comment, Craig Wayne?
No comment.
Thank you. Wei Ming, I see you're still with us. Any final comment?
No, thank you. Good meeting.
Okay. Siobhan, final comment?
No, thank you.
Jeff?
Only thank you again to everybody. I appreciate your comments.
All righty. I would just like, as my final comment, thank Jeff, and as I have before, and welcome Siobhan. I look forward to working with you, as I'm sure the rest of the board does. And I'd also like to thank all our members. I think in my weekly Wednesday email blast, I will try, like I said earlier, to include more things related to what's on the agenda, because clearly that stimulated a lot of people to get involved and have comments and send in emails. So I think that's very important that we try to encourage more people, regardless of where they stand on a particular issue. So with that, it is now 12:53 in the afternoon. I will say that we will recess at this time, and it's 12:53. Everybody needs a little time for lunch and a stretch and that kind of thing. How's about we get back together at 1:45? That sound reasonable for our closed session?
Yep.
All right. I will see everybody at 1:45 for our closed session. Thank you, folks, for I think a productive meeting. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.